Good evening. I call this session of the Greenbelt City Council to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Phipps,
Present.
Councilmember Niesel,
Here.
Councilmember McKinney,
Here.
Councilmember Pope,
Here.
Councilmember Pompey,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Weaver,
Here.
Mayor Jordan.
And obviously, in the absence of Mayor Jordan, I am running the meeting tonight. So to begin with, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Ms. Pompey, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Yeah, Mayor Jordan is out of town this week, so, and I don't believe, he didn't think he was going to be able to join virtually. I do not believe that he has joined virtually. Councilmember Fritz, could you read us the community pledge, please?
Absolutely. The strength of Greenbelt is diverse people living together in a spirit of cooperation. We celebrate all people. By sharing together, we are all enriched. We strive to be a respectful, welcoming community that is open, accessible, safe, and fair.
And now please join me in a moment of silence for residents and former residents who have passed since last meeting. Residents Chris Dwyer and Linda Fuchs Gehrman, and former resident John P. Waters Jr. Thank you. Okay, so first up on the agenda is the petitions and requests section. I see we have a lot of people in the room tonight. So the petition that is listed there will be responded to as a presentation later, but if there are other petitions or requests, feel free to raise your hand. We'll also check online to see if anybody has raised their hand for reading a petition online. We ask that you keep your petitions to no more than 5 minutes. And if you have multiple people representing a group, to ask one person to to speak for that group. We also ask that people be respectful with their comments and just remember that we are all neighbors here in Greenbelt. So I see a hand. Go ahead. And just a reminder that it is practice that we will accept the petitions and then not necessarily respond to them tonight, but make note of them and get back to folks later.
Absolutely. Thank you. Greetings, council members. Public Works employees are currently exploring the possibility of forming a union, and a number of employees have already expressed their support by signing union authorization cards. Rather than proceeding through a formal election process, employees respectfully request that these signed authorization cards be used to determine whether there is sufficient support for union recognition. The concern is that an election period will create unnecessary stress for some employees, whereas the authorization cards already reflect individuals' voluntary and informed decisions. This concern is real because of past intimidation. This request is intended to allow the process to move forward in a manner that minimizes unnecessary stress while still accurately representing employee intent. Accordingly, we ask that the council recognize a collective bargaining agent once a majority of employees have demonstrated their support through signed authorization cards. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, could you state your name and and whether you're a Greenbelt resident or not?
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, my name is Michael Canavan. I am a 40-year resident.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hartman. And yes, a reminder, if you come up to make a comment, please state your name and indicate whether you are a Greenbelt resident or not, as well as an approximate location. You don't need to give your exact address, but you can give a street or just where in the city you live, but we would like to identify Greenbelt resident or not. Go ahead, Mr. Hartman.
My name is Michael Hartman, and I'm a resident in the Center City. I want to express my appreciation for the council, city staff, and Chief Bowers for their recognition of the seriousness of the concerns expressed by the Greenbelt Resistance Network, who should themselves be lauded for their involvement and vigilance on behalf of the residents of the city. I can only wonder how many city councils, city staffs, and chiefs of police would be so responsive to the concerns of its residents, maybe Tacoma Park, maybe, but in having a full discussion at a council meeting on those concerns. I don't know what the reaction of the Greenbelt Resistance Network will be to the discussions, but the fact that it is being discussed is, in and of itself, a positive and healthy for the city and our community. So thank you very much for all people involved.
Are there any other petitions or requests? Yes, in the gray shirt in the front row. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Yes, if you're part, absolutely.
Hello, Emily White and me, Ana Fernandez. We're both Parks and Rec employees and residents of Greenbelt. We are here today to, same as Public Works, to request that the City of Greenbelt recognize a collective bargaining group from Parks and Recs also through the cards and not through an election. Thank you.
Thank you. Other petitions? Yeah, go ahead. In the white sweater first. Ms. Wilkin.
Hi, Christine Wilkin. I live on Ridge Road, and I'm up here speaking on behalf of the Greenbelt Resistance Network. So we have a group of over 100 people, and a couple months ago, someone came up to us and asked us to look into the security cameras. And we did research and found out that Greenbelt has Verkada cameras. We found a document in March of 2025 that said that we spent $175,000 on 14 cameras. So we looked into the cameras and we looked into to Verkada, and in general, we found that these cameras record 24 hours a day, and the city might be leasing the cameras and paying rent on the cameras, and that the data is stored on a cloud. So we had a petition. Actually, we just gave you guys a letter with a list of questions. The questions haven't been answered, so we turned it into a petition. We now have about 115 people that signed on to the petition, which is the exact same thing as the letter that you got a month ago with those same questions. And we just have questions about the data that is being stored on the cameras or stored on the cloud. How is it being accessed? What we want to know about transparency, about like any kind of auditing that's done at the police department to see like what type of searches they're doing. And we're concerned that it's very easy to use AI to like look through all this data, and there's just potential for abuses since if you don't have to get a warrant necessarily, or do we have to get a warrant? So we want to know is who's allowed to access the data, because there's an incredible amount of data that's being created and stored. So like basically, if I wanted to, I would know someone's whole pattern of life based on all these cameras. We don't want any more cameras being put into the city. So I know that the city is considering more cameras. The amount of money that's being spent, we feel could be used for like a human being, police officer, to do the work of the cameras. So yeah, so we have several questions. They're in the petition, and we would like to have them answered. Thank you.
Yes, and we actually have that item on the agenda. I believe an email was sent by the city manager several weeks ago indicating they would be answered in tonight's meeting. And so we do have that as an agenda item at 7E, a presentation by Chief Bowers, and the written answers to those questions are also part of the packet tonight. So we are getting to it now. I'm sorry that it took so long, but we are getting to it now. That is part of the purpose of tonight's agenda item. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Diana McFadden of Ridge Road. I've lived in Greenbelt for over 20 years. And first of all, I do want to say I'm very grateful for our police department. You know, every interaction I've had with our police has been very positive and helpful. My concerns aren't related to our police department. They are related to the purpose for which this surveillance may be influenced by other factors in our national government. I'm especially concerned about facial recognition now and in the future. I am concerned about how even our police department could be exploited in terms of using them as an accessory to exploit people and politically target them. I'm very concerned about that. And so I also want to know how would people be protected and shielded from such abuses. There are many more questions, but I am also very involved with the Greenbelt Resistance Network. So thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have Dr. Rosado online. Go ahead, Dr. Rosado.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
I I just want to support the staff. I think there's no need for another election because I know how staff can be intimidated as some of the experiences that I've had while working in Greenbelt. So I support the desire of the staff to move ahead with just the card checks. That's one. Number two, you all will have to explain why 2 more speed cameras have been put on in the west of Greenbelt, giving them 6, I believe. There's 1, 2, or 5 now, while only 2 are here in Center City. I live in Center City. So I think once again, the poor community is financing the city while the other communities are not. This has got to stop. You cannot keep putting speed cameras in one area of Greenbelt. This really has to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rosado. Anyone else in the room with a petition? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hey, I'm John Berry. I worked with UFCW 1994, and we've been talking to some members and some employees from the city over the last couple weeks, as you may know. I just want to respond to something I heard about a couple weeks ago at the last meeting, and we were discussing the question of cards and card checks. And what I got from that particular meeting was the idea, and I think that was somebody, the council was suggesting, that people don't know what they're doing when they're signing cards, and that it would be better to have a election later on. I want to strongly push back against that, and I want to say the idea that somehow people don't know what they're doing when they're voting in a certain way or they're deciding a certain thing is not only insulting, it's not true. And I also have to say that I've been working with Jackson Lewis in the past, and we have actually found ourselves faced with Jackson Lewis, which has a very good union avoidance team. And they wound up using that opportunity, those 2 or 3 weeks, to hold closed, captive audience meetings, to bring people, consultants in. The only thing that they wouldn't tell these people was where they came from or what they did. I don't know a lot about those actual meetings because the union wasn't allowed to participate. So I've got to say, sometimes when people vote no, I wonder myself whether they've been getting the right information. So I just want to make sure you understand that card checks and labor peace agreements are the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with petitions in the room? Okay. So next up is to approval of the consent agenda. Are there any modifications for the consent agenda? Did we need to take meetings off?
One modification. I'd like to remove the meeting schedule from the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda and put it at item number 17? Or
No, it would
18?
be, would it be 19 at the very end?
Do 19.
Yeah. It doesn't really, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other modifications to the consent agenda? So if that, a motion, that's a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that moves us on to the regular agenda. Are there any adjustments to the regular agenda? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, so Councilmember Niesel moved, seconded by Councilmember Fritz. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and there's the agenda. Okay, so to start out with, we have some presentations and petition proclamations. So first up is National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week proclamation. So I believe Chief Bowers and also one of our several. Oh yeah, more folks coming. Come on up. Come on forward. Okay. Hopefully this will pick up. Whereas in 1994, the Congress and the President of the United States established the second week of April as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week to recognize the importance of the role of communication personnel in public safety and police and safety departments. And whereas these unseen first responders are invaluable in emergency situations and deserve special recognition for providing outstanding service to the officers in the department and the citizens in the community. And whereas the officers of the Greenbelt Police Department must rely on the communications specialists to provide timely and proper information and to give immediate and appropriate responses to the citizens in the community. And whereas the communications specialists in the police department's communications unit must be ever alert and reliable to provide accurate information and dependable, efficient, and speedy support to the officers of the department, as well as a calm presence in emergency situations and sensitive matter to the needs of citizens in distress. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kristen L.K. Weaver, on behalf of Mayor Jordan and by the authority vested in me by the residents and City Council of Greenbelt, do declare the week of April 12th through the 18th, 2026 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the City of Greenbelt, and do hereby issue this proclamation in honor of the communication specialists of the Greenbelt Police Department, to express the appreciation of the officers of the Greenbelt Police Department, the City Council, and the residents of the community, to Communications Supervisor Alicia Williams, and to Communications Specialists Jessica Hooley, Sarah Gignac, Emily Salazar, Dianaria Hugh, and Flex Varsish for their dependable and exceptional service during the past year. Thank you. Very good. Take a picture. Council, you want to stand? We've got a gap in the middle now, conveniently. So, although the mayor usually stands above everybody, so he doesn't get lost. Thank you. And we so appreciate, I know it's not easy work, so we appreciate you very much. Is there anything that you'd like to say? Or Chief Bowers, anything you'd like to say?
They do so much talking that they get a little mic shy occasionally. Usually they talk and nobody can see them.
Fair enough.
But you know, one of the things about our organization, any public safety organization, we couldn't function without that frontline communicators, those people who answer the telephone call. When any resident calls in, they're the first voice that a resident gets. And they're our most important link to our residents because they are that first connection. And that connection that they make and the information that they are able then to get and pass on to the officers really leads to a lot of successful outcomes. So without them and their dedication, and I'll say, having worked communications at various points in my career, it's one of the most stressful jobs because of the unknown. You send people out somewhere to a dangerous situation, and then you get silence. And you don't know how the officers are, you don't know how the citizens are, you don't know what's happening because nobody's telling you, so you just sit in the room very quietly and hope everything is okay. And then if you hear yelling, now you kind of get panicked a little bit, and now you're really worried about the people out there, right? Because we're a very small organization, so you know everyone in the room, and so there's a personal connection to every officer that's out there and the citizens. So it's a very stressful job, it's a difficult job, and one of the best things they get to hear is we're all okay, the subject's in custody. And that's really a big thing for them, knowing that they're able to do that. Stressful job, super difficult job, Not a lot of people can do it, so we're grateful for the ones that we have. Thank you very much.
Yes, echoed. Thank you all. Okay, next up is Animal Control Appreciation Week. Come on forward. Whereas the National Animal Care and Control Association has designated the second full week in April as Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week, and whereas animal control officers play a vital role in the community by enforcing animal control laws, protecting the public from diseases like rabies, and educating residents in proper care of their pets, and whereas the animal control officers of the City of Greenbelt have managed various pet programs, including adoptions, lost and found services, as well as volunteer and foster initiatives, and whereas the animal control officers of the City of Greenbelt have raised citizen awareness about animal cruelty with the help of the Greenbelt Police Department, now therefore be it resolved that I, Kristen L.K. Weaver, on behalf of Mayor Jordan and by the authority vested in me by the residents and City Council of Greenbelt, hereby declare the week of April 12th through April 18th, 2026, National Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week to express the appreciation of the officers of the Greenbelt Police Department, the City Council, and the residents of the community, the animal control officers Patricia Filman, Carolina Avilas, and Isabella Schrebner for their dependable and exceptional service during the past year. Good. Thank you.
Picture?
Yeah, Councilman Stan. Yeah, I think you're
good.
Thank you. And if there's anything you'd like to say about the shelter? Okay, well, we very much appreciate it, and we know how much our residents appreciate the services of the animal shelter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I may have something.
Yeah, Ms.
Yeah,
Pope, you wanna say
I would definitely want to thank you for all your work. It's so much needed, as you know. I know you received many phone calls, and a few probably from me through the city office. If there's a loose dog or a hurt bird or a dead possum, like last week I had. We had a little issue with a dead possum in our court. So, but I do want to thank you. I know it's not always easy, and I know you're not always fully staffed, and that makes things a little bit more difficult. But I want you to know that it's greatly appreciated, and I do hear many compliments from residents. Yeah. So congratulations, and thank you so much, of course. Also for our telecommunicators, communications staff in the police office. Now they're just kind of took off on me already, but I do want to appreciate them too, really, truly, because if we're talking about first responders, they are a lot of times the first people who get this phone call, and I don't even want to, know what they hear and what they experience just being on the phone and then not knowing what's going to happen. So I think they are playing a vital role in our police department, and I do want to thank all of them.
And next up, we have Arbor Day. I believe I see a member of our advisory committee on trees and one of our wonderful public works staff here to accept this one. Hello. Whereas Arbor Day was first celebrated in the state of Nebraska in 1872 in response to a state proclamation urging settlers and homesteaders to plant trees to provide residents of the largely treeless plains with shade, shelter, fruit, fuel, and beauty. And whereas on that first Arbor Day, more than 1 million trees were planted in Nebraska's communities and on its farms. And whereas trees reduce the erosion of topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees in Greenbelt increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify the community while protecting our environment. And whereas Greenbelt proudly holds the Tree City USA designation from the National Arbor Day Foundation and remains committed to tree planting, tree care, and preserving green spaces to enhance our historic green belt. And whereas, to support these commitments, the city established an advisory committee on trees in 2000, created the Greenbelt Forest Preserve in 2003 to oversee its management, formed a Forest Preserve Advisory Board in 2007, and joined the Baltimore-Washington Partnership for Forest Stewardship in 2010. Therefore, I, Kristen L.K. Weaver, on behalf of Mayor Jordan and by the authority vested in me by the residents and City Council of Greenbelt, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 24th to be Arbor Day in Greenbelt and urge all residents and visitors to support efforts to protect our trees, which are a connection to our past, a pledge to our future generations, and a continuing source of joy and spiritual renewal for all of our residents. There you go. Picture. Council wants to stand up. And I know we have some events for Arbor Day, but I don't know if you want to talk about those or yeah.
You want to tell us
Or I
about
know-
your committee?
I see Kevin over there too, who might be okay.
Thank you. I'm Charles Jacquin. Bob, the advisory committee on trees consists of 2 members, Bob Trumbull and myself, and we also have the staff liaison, Lori Thiel, from Public Works, and we would like to thank the City Council for their many years of support for our amazing canopy of trees, which is currently at about 62% for Greenbelt. And Greenbelt has been celebrating Arbor Day, as you noted, for a number of years, in fact 26 years, and participants in the 2026 event will meet near the library at the Eleanor Roosevelt Memorial Tree, which is an American holly tree, on Saturday, April the 18th at 10 a.m. And what we're going to do is dedicate a plaque which has been made for that occasion. And the plaque reads, "This tree is a rededication of the Anne Eleanor Roosevelt Memorial Tree at this site, which Eleanor Roosevelt visited on December 9th of 1937, over 88 years ago. The American holly tree is an evergreen, which is symbolic of the everlasting and resilient spirit that is present in the citizens of Greenbelt. Also, as part of that Arbor Day celebration, over 100 native trees and bushes will be given away to residents by Public Works personnel, and to help increase the urban canopy of Greenbelt and also provide a healthier environment for all of us. So thank you for your attention.
Excellent.
Very
Thank you for that information. And I believe if people want to register for those trees, the information is on the city website, and
That's right.
and all those
Yes.
details about timing and location.
Yeah, there's still some tree possibilities left, so
Excellent.
yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, we have about
I'll go over to the microphone if you would. Yeah.
we have about a little over 60 trees left. A lot of them were picked out, so what's left over is red maples and black gums, which are both spectacular trees. So sign up soon on the city website, and there's a species selection form, and come down on Saturday and pick up your trees.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles.
Okay, and the last proclamation for tonight for Earth Day. Come on up, Kevin Carpenter Driscoll. Whereas Earth Day was first celebrated on April 22nd, 1970, with the goal of inspiring environmental awareness and encouraging the conservation, protection, and appreciation of our nation's natural resources. And whereas it is the responsibility of each of us to safeguard the environment by recognizing that all human life depends on the earth and upon one another for our mutual existence, well-being, and development. And whereas Greenbelt supports the climate change initiative goals of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and the state of Maryland's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Initiative. And whereas Greenbelt takes many steps to protect and enhance our natural surroundings through a variety of positive actions, including community cleanup days, planting projects, refuse and recycling initiatives, and educational forums and workshops. And whereas Greenbelt is recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, a Bee City USA by the Xerxes Society, a Maryland Smart Energy Community, a Sustainable Maryland certified community and an Environmental Protection Agency Green Power Partner, and has pledged to continue increasing its recycling rate, expanding its fleet of alternative fuel vehicles, promoting green building and complete street techniques, increasing energy efficiency, improving air quality, and preserving its open spaces. And whereas the city established the Greenbelt Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability and a green team to study, investigate, and advise council on environmental issues impacting Greenbelt, and whereas Greenbelt proudly recognizes all who participate in Earth Day for their proactive dedication to shaping a better future, now therefore I, Kristen L.K. Weaver, on behalf of Mayor Jordan and by the authority vested in me by the citizens and City Council of Greenbelt, do hereby issue this proclamation in honor of the 56th anniversary of Earth Day and urge all our residents to celebrate Earth Day by supporting and joining in efforts to protect our environment and to preserve the beauty, wonder, and diversity of our Earth's land, skies, and waters.
That was quite a...
that one was a long one. And I know we also have some Earth Day events coming up.
Evening. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Council. Yes, this 25th of April, we will be celebrating Earth Day. We're going to be having a large event at Buddy Attic Park. We'll be doing part kayak cleanup, part shoreline planting, where we're going to be enhancing the shoreline with some native plantings, removing invasive species. But at the same time, we're going to be working with Venture Crew 746, our local venture crew is part of Scouts of America. They're going to be working with, going to bring their canoes. We're going to have our kayaks that we have, taking people out, cleaning up the litter from the lake, and having a really good time, honestly. We have, they're going to be setting up a campsite, teaching people how to do some demonstrations for camp cooking. And there is word that the Rotary Club is trying to hammer down a food truck to be on site. So a lot of activity that day.
Excellent. Is there an over and under on how many tennis balls are going to be collected?
Geez, Lori, what was it like? You caught 70 by yourself. Yeah.
They're unfortunately, many of them I do think roll down into the lake.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from council? Well, we appreciate everything that all the events that you do and these regular cleanups and especially starting to do the ones on the lake, which I think is a relatively new, the on the water cleanups is a relatively new innovation, but clearly is needed based on what gets collected. So much appreciation for all the work, and also to all the volunteers who are going to come out and help on April 25th. And I think more information on that is available on our website as well. And you can reach out to Kevin to sign up as well.
Yep, right on the city website. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, have a wonderful evening. Okay, so next up we have Chief Bowers coming back up to give us a presentation about the license plate reader cameras. I was going to say you didn't.
She's like, really? Really being gracious to you. So.
Prepared to be able to flee that way in case, I needed to leave.
What did you do? What did you do?
Apparently, Ms. Mullins does not wish to be on camera tonight. Thank you. Welcome, Council. Thank you for having me tonight. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that's up, and we provided you some information earlier last week with the answers to the questions that have been provided within the petition. I want to start on the first slide and just talk about a little bit about the program, how we got here, and just some kind of basic details. So if you remember, back in 2024, there were some presentations made to council about license plate reading camera programs and some of the benefits that we thought we could get from those in terms of crime reduction and public safety. We were proposed to use ARPA dollars, and it was about $174,000 to acquire 16 cameras and the associated infrastructure that went with them to make them work. Our camera system actually is slightly smaller than we originally went with, and we actually have 12 sites that we proposed to have cameras at. That'll contain about 14 cameras, actually 16 total cameras at those sites. As it turns out, those 12 sites are less than 10% of all of the cameras the city actually already owns. And so why did we do it? You know, we talked about some of the public safety aspects, crime prevention, crime reduction, ability to interfere with stolen vehicles as they come into the city, and to investigate crime as it occurs in those areas. So we'll jump to the next slide. And again, this is some more background on the program itself and cameras in general, right? I think there's some misconception about what cameras do what across the city. I heard Dr. Rosado make a comment about speed cameras and being different ones. So the city actually owns a number of different camera systems, right? We have our red light camera system, which are on some of our main roads, Greenbelt Road, Edmonston Road. We have cameras, we have red light cameras. We have speed cameras, which have existed, and we have those in a number of different sites across the city, particularly around Eleanor Roosevelt High School. We also now have stop sign cameras that have gone up in 6 locations, 3 in this part of town, and then some over by the elementary school and middle school. So we have 3 and 3, so we have a total of 6 of those currently up and operational in the warning phase. So we have those spread out, so there's 6 of those cameras. The city has its own surveillance cameras, security cameras in every facility, building, park, place that the city owns, right? And so there's 136 of those camera systems that are already in operation. Those are run by the city's Information Technology Department, and they are in Shrum Hills, they're down here at the city center, Spellman Overpass, they are all over town. There's 136 of those cameras already in existence. And about 2 years ago, we invested ARPA money in replacing and upgrading that entire system. You may recall that project, and it was run by, at the time, previous information director, Mr. Worley. And then so we recently added these license plate reading cameras along with what's called a context camera to go with those license plate reading cameras. And those went up on a couple different locations, if you remember from the original maps, Greenbelt Station Parkway, Cherrywood, Breezewood. We also have Hanover, Mandan around the high school. So we have 6 current, and we have 6 cameras left to install. So that's where kind of, I think maybe there's some misconception about what camera does what. They all kind of look a little bit similar, but they all have a completely different function. One of the things that's interesting about any of the traffic enforcement cameras that exist, whether they're ours or any other agencies in the state, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but the data that's collected may only be used under state law for the traffic enforcement purpose, right? So if there's a stop sign camera and somebody commits a crime here in the city center and then drives past that camera, if they didn't stop, right, we wouldn't have a picture of it. We could subpoena the record from our vendor, right, to get that information for a criminal purpose, but we cannot just access it to get the data. So anything that's not affiliated with its original purpose, the department or any police department in the state of Maryland has to get a subpoena to get those records. All right, so that's state law. So that ensures some of that security and data integrity for those particular types of cameras. So what do the LPRs collect? They collect license plate data, right? Every car has a tag on it. As you drive through the cameras, they take a picture of your tag. And then the idea is that when the system is fully integrated with NCIC, it will compare those tag numbers to what's called a hot list, which is updated by the state every 6 hours, and it determines if that vehicle tag number appears on a hot list, right? So just because it's on the hot list doesn't mean anything. It has to still be verified that it is actually the correct tag. The computer read it correctly, so a human then has to do something to verify that data. So it's not just actionable information alone. There has to be some secondary step to verify that piece of information. Again, we identify primarily license plates. Our General Order 717 talks about license plate data, that it's how it comes into us. The one thing that's important to note is that we don't store the data here in Greenbelt. The data is stored within the camera itself for less than 24 hours. It is then transferred to the Maryland Analysis and Coordination Center, where it is stored and audited for any purpose. So we have live view ability, so there's an alert that comes in live. We can see that. But any subsequent investigation involving that information, We then have to go back to MCAC, or that's the Maryland Coordination Center, and make a request to get that data back. So any historical data used in an investigation, we're submitting a request to get our own data back from the state, but that's how it's audited and tracked that it's for a legitimate law enforcement purpose, right? So that's the important thing. The context cameras that we do have up, those store data for up to 30 days. The data is initially stored on the local camera itself, but like any camera, if it gets full, it will offload that data, and it will offload it into a secure cloud storage. Those cloud storage devices are not accessible, and I'll get to this some other places, by anybody other than departmental personnel. The company does not have access to our data. We own it. They can't touch it without us letting them into the system, and we don't let them into the system to look at our data. So it's our data. It's owned by the city. It's automatically deleted at the 30-day point unless it's determined to be evidence in a crime. If it's determined to be evidence in a crime, we will pull that down and we will treat it just like any type of photography evidence that we're processing, right? So it would go into our data storage system, and it would be stored as evidence within that storage system, right? And it would come off of the camera system, right? Well, we would download it and then put it into evidence storage. If I'm talking too fast or anyone has questions, just let me know. And I hit on a little bit of this already on the next slide, data sharing. Yes,
go
ma'am.
ahead. Go ahead, Catherine.
You talked about the MCAC data storage and reasons that it can be accessed. Isn't it true that data can still only be accessed if there's a criminal charge involved? You can't just, people can't just go in there and troll through it. Like, you have to have a subpoena, you have to have a criminal warrant. And it's a criminal warrant because they don't use these for immigration enforcement purposes, correct?
So a little bit later, I've got a slide on legal standards, but I'll jump ahead just so you have an idea. So under state law, the data can only be accessed for legitimate law enforcement purpose, which under Maryland law means an investigation, detention, analysis of crime or violation of the Maryland Transportation Article, or the operation of a terrorist, missing person, or endangered persons alert list. So an Amber Alert, right? Terrorist watch list alert. Those things can be accessed, but otherwise it must be for a traffic enforcement purpose, right? As we do with the red light cameras, things like that, or for a criminal investigation. So that's the only reason it can be downloaded, and that's state law, and so that's how the MCAC controls their data.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So again, I talked about this a little bit. The system is accessible only by PD staff who have been trained and authorized to use the system. The data after its initial download is transferred to the Maryland Coordination Analysis Center, and we have to request to get it back adhering to state guidelines for criminal investigation. It may only be used by a law enforcement agency, including us. The data is not shared with any other agency, but other agencies could request it under MCAC guidelines. Again, if the county police was looking for something from our data, they would have to go to MCAC to get it, and it would have to fit the state law definition to get that data, right? So not anybody can get it. Other law enforcement agencies in the state can, but again, they have to follow the state law to get the data and what its purpose is. So every agency that contributes to MCAC has access to can make a request, but again, it must be a legitimate law enforcement purpose. I'm lost my place a little bit. The city-owned cameras only used by department personnel must be law enforcement, and we audit our system as in our General Order 717. So the audit described in policy is a yearly audit, both the way our professional standards lieutenant does it. He randomly takes 2 users a month and audits their access to the system, and anything they've done, records that, and at the end of each year compiles a report based on those random audits. The only people who have access are supervisors. So anybody who's in either an investigative role or the rank of corporal and up have access to the system, and all of their access is audited on a regular basis. So we know that nobody's logging in and constantly searching the same tag or looking for things that they shouldn't be looking for. So that way we can ensure that there's some compliance with the system and that we know we're using it in an appropriate fashion. And the little screenshot you see, it shows you what one of those audit logs will look like. It's just a snippet because I can't show you the whole piece of it, but you can get an idea of, it shows you who logged in, what they looked for, and so it's built into the software itself, and we can search by user to see anytime they logged into the system, any searches they made within the system, and then so that gives us the ability to then go back and spot check what anybody is doing inside of the data.
Can you go back a slide or two, because Ms. Lashley Mullen? So there was, maybe it's the next one. Okay, no, so, okay, so the sent to the state for storage, but somewhere, you said 30 days. You can go back to the next slide.
There's two. There's
Okay.
LPR data, which is the license plate data itself.
Ah,
That
okay.
is 24 hours and off to MCAC. The contextual camera, which is the one that takes a picture of the car itself,
Okay.
that is 30 days. That's stored locally and then deleted if it's not used for anything.
But then MCAC keeps it for 12.
Not get that data.
MCAC does not get that data at all.
They
Okay.
only get the tag.
They just get the tag.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand, that disconnect. Thank you.
MCAC only gets the tag. The contextual camera stays locally with us and then is deleted at 30 days if it's not evidence.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So I touched on the next one. So we'll go to the next one.
Actually, can you go back? I think that's important. I think we should emphasize this one. Yeah.
This is a question I know has come up, is about facial recognition. The system, obviously, it doesn't do facial recognition like if you had a picture of my face, you would find me. It does recognize motion inside of its frame, and that motion could be a person, it could be an animal, and it will say, well, that was a dog that went through, or that was a person that walked through. The cameras, contrary to what TV might look like, they don't take a good enough picture at the distances that we have them located that they would be able to identify Mayor Pro Tem walking down the street. I mean, you'd literally have to walk right underneath the camera for it to get that good of a picture. And again, this is not TV land. It's kind of a reality based. So we, the police department, we don't have any kind of software that's going to depixelize a photograph in 20 minutes over a commercial break to zoom in to see Ms. Pompey, right? It just doesn't happen. Maybe NSA can do it, right? And they got a satellite in space that's listening to us, but we, the Greenbelt Police Department, and nobody I know of has such technology. Once those pictures start to pixelate, you just can't make it any clearer. It's just not. A computer, maybe a supercomputer, nothing that we have access to. So the whole people recognition, facial recognition, I know it's a question, like if you were to walk into a building, the cameras are probably a little bit, they're lower, they're closer, a little higher res, that get a better picture of you. The cameras we have, they're up on poles. They're so far away that you really don't get a good face, a good face person. You might be able to say they have on a blue shirt, but you wouldn't be able to go beyond that in most cases. But nonetheless, we actually have the feature turned off. So the feature is disabled in all of our cameras. And again, the screenshot here shows you what those settings would look like inside the application. As you can see, they're all set to off. There's only 2 people in the facility that have access to this administrative settings, and that is the Deputy Chief of Police and our Professional Standards Lieutenant. They're the only ones that can go in. And so if anybody makes any changes to this, it's going to be pretty obvious. It's one of 2 people, all right? And so we feel very confident in the security of the system and that these features are disabled and will remain disabled unless some other decision comes along.
And is that covered in the general orders that we will not use the facial recognition?
It is not, but one of the things there's also a state law on facial recognition usage, and we're required each year to submit a report to the state of Maryland on any time we use facial recognition. And so that's all in the state law. And I can tell you, having just done the report, we don't have any systems capable of it. So if we need something like that done, we have to make a request to another entity we'll make a request to MCAC if they can. Here's a picture of a person, can you make a database inquiry for it? So to do it, we don't have the capability of doing it, and it's all has to be reported to the state at the end of each year.
Councilmember Fritz.
Yeah, and that law was Senate Bill 182 by Senator Sidnar in 2024. And for the public's understanding, there's actually a restricted number of crimes that you can actually be used for. It can't just be used for general surveillance. There's a list of precisely 12 charges that that's facial recognition can be used by Maryland law enforcement for. So if it's not for one of those purposes, I presume that request would be denied.
Yep. And I think they actually might have tightened the law up even more this year. So I think that, I think that's a concern of facial recognition. So that is one of the things that we addressed early on in the program to make sure that we had that feature disabled, because I knew that was a concern. So talked about some legal standards. I know one of the questions had to do with, do we need a warrant to use this? So the answer is no. There's no warrant that's necessary to use license plate reading cameras. or even take surveillance footage in a public place. Maryland law does govern what the data can be used for. As I described earlier, LPR data can only be used for legitimate law enforcement purpose, right, as talked about. The other thing that I've included in here is public monitoring of public spaces. There was a recent circuit court ruling in our circuit, federal circuit down out of Norfolk, that upheld that the city's LPR and camera program was constitutional. They didn't believe it infringed on anybody's rights because it was a public space. Some of the other kind of interesting things, the tag that appears on your vehicle is actually not your property. It belongs to the state of Maryland. You only pay for the right to use it. So like if you turn your car in, you must return that tag because the tag belongs to the state. So you have no expectation of privacy on the tag number attached to your vehicle, right? You have no expectation of privacy in a public location. There's no expectation of privacy walking into this building. So that is sort of the piece about cameras. Legally, they're fully considered to be constitutional and not a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights of privacy because you're in a public place. If you're inside your home, that's a whole different thing, and we don't have any cameras that would face inside of anybody's home, right? That would be illegal. So we make sure that they're all monitoring public spaces, and obviously it's for public safety, right? It's to ensure that our public spaces are safe places to be. And I'll jump to the next one, because I think this is kind of the most important piece. When we received council authorization a year and a half ago to enact this program, one of the things that was requested of us was to work with the then termed Public Safety Advisory Committee, now the ACAPS. I'm gonna keep making the wrong name. And to work on a policy, to work on our general order. And I'd asked Ms. Higgins to come up, who's the chair of the committee, just to talk briefly about that interaction and what their take on it was and how we went into it and how we developed a policy. Ms. Higgins?
Good evening. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your service. I'm Peggy Higgins, the chair of the now named Advisory Committee Advancing Public Safety. Committee members, I'm just gonna, we work for the city, for you all. Steve Mirsky, Stan Zirkin, Mary Thomas, Laura Kresler, Eunice Pierre, and Kathy Reynolds. I know that Steve Mirsky is here, and some of my colleagues might be on the Zoom call. About a year and a half ago, when the discussion about LPRs was a new issue, the council directed that our committee participate in the development of the department's LPR general order. We appreciate the concerns raised by the Greenbelt Resistance Network. As in our committee's discussions with the chief and the deputy chief, we raised some of the same reservations that were identified in the petition, such as collection, storage, security, and use of data collected, and the use of the dome cameras attached to some of the LPRs. This is a serious matter, and with the chief and the deputy chief, we too took it seriously. Our committee worked to balance the interests of Greenbelt's values, as stated in the petition, of civic engagement and respect for civil rights, with the serious safety problem Greenbelt residents are having with car thefts. The chief consistently presented the deterrence factor of the LPR, saying that while it won't keep car thieves from stealing cars, the expectation is that it would cause car thieves to go to other jurisdictions that wouldn't have license plate readers. With the 3 of the 4 issues that we raised in our meetings included in the revised general order, our committee unanimously voted in support of the department's submission of the updated general order license plate reader. Our decision was influenced by the information that, separate from license plate readers, the city has about 100 fixed cameras on our city buildings, as well as the chief pointing out that there are cameras throughout the area capturing us on the Beltway, in the county, and in municipalities. The one recommendation we made that was not included in the general order, and which was also referenced in the Greenbelt Resistant Network's petition, was we had listed 4 measurable outcomes for this program. In our meeting, the chief pointed out that outcome measures were better included as part of the assessment reports to council rather than in a general order, and we agreed. I'm not sure where the department is in regard to measures, but we too thought, along with the network, that it would be valuable to have outcome measures. We realize that our focus and our decisions doesn't address all the petitions issues that were raised. Something like flock safety, that was not something that we discussed then. I think the chief is going to address it later. But we hope that that our participation or that this information is helpful, and want to thank the council, the city manager, the department, as well as the Greenbelt Resistant Network for your diligence in this matter and for the seriousness with which we all have taken this issue. I do have just something brief in closing. In closing, at our meeting last week, we had a visitor who wondered or questioned whether our committee was reflective of the Greenbelt community. And like every advisory committee, we're appointed by the council. And I will say that we're a racially and gender mixed group, although not very diverse in our range of ages. So that's all I got. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Okay, please continue, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Higgins. So again, that was important to us to have their involvement, and we were able to work through and create a general order, which is 717, which is available on our website, and I believe it was included in your packets as well. And it talks about all of the different requirements that we have, including the audits and data usage and storage and all those security features that have to exist. And there's a lot of work, and it's a living document like any of our general orders. So as things change and evolve, we can make modifications where need be, and I think that's important. Couple of the pieces to it that I know that we've talked about is having some measures of success, right? What does a good program look like? And so when we jump to the next one, we talk about some of our program results to date. The one thing that we've worked through some technical hurdles along the way. The first one that slowed us down, we've kind of had 3 technical hurdles. The first one was the integration piece to MCAC that slowed us down quite a bit, and making the state uses a single vendor and then having to get a different vendor to communicate through their servers. Took a little time, but that got worked out. And then, of course, if anybody's ever dealt with our electric provider, getting them to install power somewhere can be a little bit of a slow process, and that took another 9 months. So we worked through that hurdle. The last piece to the puzzle that we're working through with the vendor now is the hot list integration, which is their NCIC component. The vendor got their NCIC certification to be able to host it. So we're now just working through those technical details. We'll be meeting with them next week. And once we get that, we'll start to see a lot more live data, particularly hot list hits on vehicles as they pass through, which we think is going to be important. Because, as we move back into spring and summer, we're already starting to see an uptick, particularly in vehicle crimes, as they span kind of the 193 corridor. So that's really our area of concern, any of the streets that pass through there. So we were really looking at how do we impact that corridor. But I think some examples in terms of success. So I think the first one speaks for itself. We had a series of homicides in September. And one of those homicides was closed directly as a result of the camera system that we had in place. It captured a picture of the suspect vehicle. And without that photograph of that vehicle, we would not have led to the arrest of 4 individuals. So when you talk about what is that worth, I can't put a dollar value on closing that case for that young man's family, right? I don't think there is a dollar value that we could assess to it. If somebody tried to say, well, is that worth $10,000 of our money? Is that worth $25,000? We can't say what closing that case in that young man's life was worth, right? So I think that case and other cases like it, we've used it in several other violent crimes, but we've also used it to locate a missing person, collecting the data that when they went missing, they were an elderly, endangered missing person. They wandered away, and we were able to use the camera system to locate them. And then recently, a burglary investigation that occurred off of Greenbelt Station Parkway, able to collect data from the camera system and work on closing that case. So there's a number of different types of examples. I don't want to just kind of harp on one type of thing, because it's been assisted us in multiple cases across the spectrum of what we can do with it, whether it's a missing person or homicide case, right? So the data, I think the successes speak to itself. These are all related mostly to criminal matters. But being able to investigate and have that data, it's been invaluable to us to be able to close cases through our investigative section. And the beauty is as we get more familiar with it and our officers get familiar, they're quickly going, okay, we had some theft from autos last night. Let's see what was there. Maybe if particularly Greenbelt Station Parkway, Hanover Mandan area where we have much more good coverage there, we're able to see vehicle traffic. So that's been very helpful for our detectives in terms of closing crime and the patrol officers working to be able to watch some different areas. Kind of the next slide, kind of what's next. And one of the things that we originally had $175,000 basically funded for this. Due to some technology changes and some price reductions, we were able to get a couple of extra cameras that we have ready to install. Hate to call them extra because we were originally authorized, I think, 16 cameras, and I think that's basically what we have now. But because these cameras are a little more compact, we don't need as many at a different location. So we're looking at how do we continue to improve and get better? Where are some coverage areas that we can get to? So on the next slide, I just have a map here. And so on this map, you got two different colored little markers. The green marks are existing sites, right? So you can see where we have existing. And the reds are where we propose to put the other cameras that we have. Some of these we talked about the last meeting. I remember Mayor Jordan talking about Southway. We have looked at, as an organization, some areas where we think we can have an impact, particularly Walker Drive, because we do see a lot of commercial or vehicle thefts from vehicles at the hotels at that location. So being able to do something to help there. Same again with Ivy, because of the nature of those business areas. They're not really occupied at night, so they unfortunately have a tendency to lean towards a little bit more nighttime crime. And then kind of we talked about Greenbelt Road, being able to look at traffic coming in and out of the city, and we think that's important. And the other one is down over off of Hanover, down by Good Luck, which is an entrance to the city as well. And that would really give us a lot of ability to see what's transiting in and out of the city. We know where vehicles come in and out, particularly along those routes. The other thing that's good or bad, depending how you look at it, the United States Park Police have installed flock cameras up and down the parkway. If anybody drives the parkway, you'll see the little black camera stands in the middle of the road. They have them like every 3 or 4 miles on the road. And they're adjacent to the parkway exits to 193. So they're able to pick off a lot of cars that would be coming up the parkway. And so we have with their system and the state police's system out on 495, and we add those locations, we'll really be able to see a lot of things coming and going. And it'll lead to more interdiction, particularly at night when we see these individuals come into town. They generally are driving stolen cars to commit more crime, particularly steal wheels off of vehicles, commit thefts from vehicles. And it'll give us an ability to the midnight shift officers to know they're in town because they'll get the alert that this vehicle entered. And then the other great part is we'll be able to kind of narrow down where they're headed to when they come into the city because of the way the cameras are set up. If they come in and they go down Mandan or Hanover, they would trigger another camera, really narrowing the area the officers have to look. Now, we don't chase stolen vehicles. That's a violation of our policies. But being able to get there and at least either make an attempt to capture the people that are stealing from cars or get them out of the city, that's a success, right? Preventing crime, for taking away the opportunity is part of the battle, and that's what this system is designed to do, is take away people's opportunity because it allows us to respond a little faster and react. One of the things, we have a good police department, we have a number of officers, but we don't have that many officers that we can be everywhere all the time. And during the daytime, we get a lot of help from residents calling in when they see something unusual. But at night, everybody's asleep, right? So I've got 6 or 7 sets of eyes out there to cover a 10 square mile city, right? If I have these extra devices, that's another set of eyes, helping us cover those parts of the city that we can't be at. And I've heard people make suggestions. Well, let's just hire some more police officers. Well, for the cost of $175,000, that gets me a police officer and a half for 1 year, right? And I would love more police officers, but what is an effective, efficient use of our funds and our time and our operations, right? And this is about efficiency. It's about effectiveness. It's about giving the officers more tools to do their jobs, right, effectively. And that's what we're aiming for, and it's all about public safety. And we think we've set enough rules in place to ensure, you know, that the data is secure, that there's no unauthorized access. It's not shared with federal immigration authorities. You know, the one piece to that is that by city code, no group in the city can share any information with federal immigration authorities, right? That's city code, not just police department policy or MCAC policy, but that's city code that you all enacted, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's our camera, the Public Works trailer cameras, the city building cameras, somebody's, you know, recreation registration. We share nothing with federal immigration authorities. So the data is secure from all of those things. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you. I was going to bring that up. Thank you for mentioning that. I don't know that everybody knows how far our ordinance went to protect the data of every single person in this city. Like maybe people didn't realize that, but it was, you know, it was not just to prevent the police from collaborating with ICE. It really goes across the city. So thank you for mentioning that. You talked about these new cameras that we're getting or additional cameras. You also mentioned the flock cameras that I believe you said it's the state police are using, or is the park police are using
Park
on
police.
on the parkway. Do we have any flock cameras, or do we have plans to purchase any of those cameras?
We do not have flock cameras. We do not have any plans to purchase flock cameras. Also, I know that somebody had made mention, I'll just touch on real quick. To the cameras, we actually own these devices. They are warranted for 10 years. So at the end of 10 years, you know, we'll make a decision if we want to replace them, renew the warranties or what have you. But that's 10 years from now. So we own these devices. They are city property. Flock, on the other hand, Flock has a different type of contract. You rent them on a monthly basis. And then the other thing, I think Flock maybe strategically didn't do themselves any favors. It all depends on the organization and how you set up your user agreement with Flock as to whether your data is shared or not. Because they are a nationwide network, if a police department in California puts in ABC 123, it might hit every police department system that has Flock, right? But if you don't share your data within their system, then that request never gets to you. We do have neighboring jurisdictions that have Flock. We don't have them. We don't have any plans to get them at this point. Like, that would be kind of crazy for us to have invested the money we have and then sort of take it all down, right?
Purchase cameras
Yeah.
and then also rent cameras.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Fritz.
Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the map. Do we have any data or information sharing with Prince George's County? I know that they've been trying to get localities and individual businesses and county residents to, you know, join their FUSIS system, which is a county-wide centralized database that I believe goes through their Joint Analysis and Intelligence Center. Do we have currently any relationship with that in terms of direct data sharing? Can they access our cameras without our permission?
They cannot access our cameras, but they know they exist and they're in their system and they can make a request to MCAC to get the data.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just say since we're on license plate reader cameras, you know, this is people are understandably very concerned about this issue. This is actually to the day, the third anniversary of my car being stolen, and I was living in Silver Spring at the time, and then it was driven into Prince George's County, a couple miles from here, and was recovered. A license plate reader camera would not have picked that up because it had already been crashed before I was able to report it stolen, right? So I went to bed. I had actually left my tax information in there to do my taxes. And fortunately, all my property was recovered. But that is an issue where no amount of deterrence is going to work if there are underlying issues of prevention that have made these cars soft targets. Folks are aware of the Hyundai Kia, break-in or anti-lock scandal. Hyundai and Kia sold 9 million cars over the last decade that did not have anti-theft software. They sold the same cars in Europe under European regulations with that anti-theft software, but to save $100 per car, they did not sell any anti-theft software. And it was so easy that children on TikTok could take a screwdriver and a USB drive and break into a car. And no amount of cameras or anything else is going to save us when we have 9 million cars that are basically unlocked for people to steal. And you know, the people who've had their cars stolen still haven't been made whole. They're still processing that settlement today. And Hyundai and Kia, you know, saved $1 billion for 10 years, and they still haven't had to pay out a cent as of yet. So, you know, there are a lot of factors in what causes these spikes and what causes these reductions. And, you know, this is one part of a holistic strategy to address prevention, deterrence, and accountability. But you can't do any one part of it alone. If we have a bunch of open targets, we could have all the cameras and we could hire all the officers we want. You would need 9 million officers for the 9 million cars that are out there. But I just wanted to share that because no one technology is going to solve our crime problem. I'm not saying you're saying that, but we have to think of all these things holistically of how these systems are working together, but also very importantly, you know, how widespread this information is being shared, right? Because, you know, does the county have it? Does the federal government know where these cameras are? Even if we don't share that information with them, I am concerned that, you know, we have an administration that might not follow the law. And if they know where all these cameras are, that is still an issue if they know where the data is ultimately being stored.
Although they would still have to submit a subpoena or a warrant to get to the data.
I'm saying if we're beyond that point.
Well, I think we have bigger problems depending on how far we get beyond that. One quick question. So we've talked about some of the different types of cameras, and I believe some of them, the stop sign cameras, the speed cameras, and also the red light cameras are limited to school zones. Because I think we've had some questions from residents about why did we pick the locations we did for some of these cameras, and why didn't we put them in this other place that also has a lot of cars running a stop sign? So which ones are limited to school zones and which ones can we put elsewhere?
So our program, so under state law, you can do, for speed cameras, you can do residential or you can do school zone. All of ours are school zone cameras, are speed cameras. We don't have any residential programs. The stop sign cameras can only be in school zones, and so all of those have to be within a half mile of the school. And so that's kind of what drove those. You also have to have, honestly, you know, you have to have an issue with the stop sign.
Right.
You know, if you don't have a stopping issue, there's no sense to put an enforcement device out there. And the locations, if you were to take a kind of an idea and think about where our cameras are located, different cameras in different locations. Our speed cameras generally are around Eleanor Roosevelt High School, on Mandan, 193, and then we have 2 on Cherrywood, and then the one down the street here. So those are really set in areas kind of more adjacent to the schools, and across all sides of the city. The stop sign cameras really are clustered in the center part of city and over by the middle school and the elementary school. Around the high school, we just didn't find a location that needed it. And then the stop sign cameras are mainly on 193. The red light cameras, I'm sorry. Red light cameras are mainly on 193, where we have the, you know, kind of that high accident rate for people not stopping at the red lights.
Thank you. Ms. Newsom.
Thank you. I just want to be really, really clear that I'm fully against increased surveillance in the city. There is no data that supports, that says that LPRs actually reduce violent crime whatsoever. As you stated yourself, it simply displaces the crime. I do not want to live in a panopticon, and I will do everything I can during my time on council to ensure that we stay as clear and careful as we can about our data privacy and the privacy of everyone who lives here. I also want to say that I'm extremely concerned and share the concerns of the Greenbelt Resistance Network about the placement of these cameras, and we did discuss this as a group, and it has come up before, but the continued placement of cameras in primarily rental and minority majority neighborhoods is really, really tough to see. And so I want you, Chief Bowers, to know that as long as I am sitting here, I will speak against surveillance, and I want our city to know that we can still speak out against surveillance.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would, Chief Bowers, I know you're here to talk about the LPRs, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the stop sign cameras, because I've seen some confusion online about the stop sign cameras and how they operate, how they collect data, and how we process the tickets. And even though I know there was a very comprehensive article in the News Review on April 1st, which really explained all of this, and it would just be great if you could talk a little bit about that, because they're very different. It's a very different model, and it's a very different company, and the way the data is stored is different, and how it's processed is different. So if you could just share a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the thing with the stop signs, they do record the image of the vehicle passing through, and the AI looks at it to determine, did the vehicle go through? But there's also a speed component to it as well. So the piece that we utilize, obviously the computer looks for the violation of vehicle not stopping, but it's using the vehicle's speed to determine what's a violation. So we the city of Greenbelt, we set the threshold at 4 miles an hour. So that means if you're doing less than 4 miles an hour, the computer will consider you to have stopped, right? Because when you get down to those low speeds, right, people think, we've all probably done it, you're down at 1 mile an hour, you feel the vehicle do like this, and you go through the intersection, but you may not have come to a full and complete stop. And we wanted to have a repeatable threshold. Some organizations, use the eyeball test, which means I have the 7 of you approving tickets, and you're each looking at it and deciding what's a violation. Well, the 7 of you are not going to have a uniform standard, right? So the one thing that we thought of when we went through this program was, how do we ensure a uniform standard to approve what is a violation and what isn't? And using a speed measure is the most uniform way to do it. Just like with the speed, the automated speed, you have to be going 11 over or greater to actually get a ticket. We looked at that, and we looked at what some other organizations were doing. And so we picked 4 miles an hour after looking at videos, saying, okay, that's a good threshold. Like if you're doing more than 4, you clearly didn't stop for the stop sign. So that is how we process the ticket. The computer looks at it, it sees you go through, it does a speed measurement, 4 miles an hour. That triggers a possible violation. That possible violation is then sent to us, and one of our police officers reviews it and says, yes, in fact, that is a violation, and then it's approved. Right? So that's the process. The company, the vendor, determines what's a possible violation based on our parameters, which is that speed parameter. They forward it to us. We look at it, and we approve it if it fits the criteria. And just as a quick kind of preliminary, we had 6 days worth of data. So the first 6 days the system was operational, and they identified 16,000 potential violations.
I was just gonna, my follow-up would be, if you don't, if you don't trigger that 4 mile per hour limit, what happens to your data?
It goes away. It's not. It only saves the violation data.
Get in the mail with your ticket.
Okay. Ms. McKinney, and then if Ms. Pope wants to say anything, and then we have a lot of people, I think we ask for some comments, but Ms. McKinney first.
Just to clarify, and apologies, thank you for all of the information. So I'm taking all of it in, so I might have missed it. Can you just clarify, how do you determine the placement of certain cameras? So going to looking at where a camera actually goes, are you looking at speed limit? Are you looking at location? Are you looking at the type of road that it is? Like, how is that determined? Population, because I think that's the concern.
So when we're talking about any sort of automated enforcement, you're really trying to target areas that have a problem, right? You wouldn't put, a speed camera on Southway because speeding's not a problem on Southway, right? You'd put a speed camera where speed is excessive. You'd put a stop sign camera where you're seeing pedestrian traffic and high numbers of violations. I mean, we know from the test we did with the stop sign cameras, we're seeing about 90% of people running stop signs, right? So those were the locations that we selected. Near schools, high pedestrian traffic, high vehicle traffic with high rates of violations or crashes. Those are the 2 drivers. The red lights is really looking at high violations or high volume of crashes at those locations, kind of pre-camera. You'll obviously see a reduction after the cameras go up because you change driving behavior. Now, you also change driving behavior, and sometimes you'll get, instead of getting T-bone intersection crashes, you get rear-end crashes because the second driver thought the first driver would go through and they didn't. But those crashes are a little easier on the occupants than are the intersection, T-bone crashes. Those are much more injuring crashes. So you have to kind of pick your poison there a little bit. But we see crash reduction based on the cameras. We see speed reduction. Now, the downside to speed cameras is, they will reduce speed in the area that they're located, right? Then drivers will resume their normal behavior when they get past it. But we can, in those areas where we know we have a school and we have a lot of kids out crossing roadways or on sidewalks, we really want to be able to reduce those vehicle speeds in those areas. And that's what they do. They do reduce vehicle speeds in the areas they're located. And you do see, particularly with speed camera, over the life of those cameras, you'll see a 90% reduction in violations over the course of those cameras because they're that effective. But everybody learns where they are, and they slow down where they are, and that's the whole idea, is to get people to slow down and comply, because we've identified those areas as in need of because of speed, pedestrian traffic, vehicle traffic, and crashes, right? The LPR cameras were really looked at crime statistics, like what's driving our crime, where are those areas, and those are the areas we focused on, right? For better or worse, we know, and I won't name the part. We have one neighborhood that kind of drives a lot of our criminal activity, and so we really focus on trying to be in a better place to interdict there and be able to reduce some opportunity and further our criminal investigations kind of afterwards. And it does have an impact being able to make arrests and remove repeat offenders, particularly, right? We know that the same people have a habit of committing the same crimes, and if we're able to get them off of our streets, we will see crime come down. We will displace some crime because people will go someplace else, but we will take repeat offenders off the street, and that's a good thing. So those are all what drive all the camera placement. It's not haphazard. It's not intended to target a particular section of town. It has a purpose, and it's goal driven, and that goal sometimes can be because we see a crime pattern in that area, and we see a crash pattern, we see a vehicle pattern, right? It's all out to identify a strategic area and address a specific problem.
Ms. Pope, did you want to say anything? Since you haven't had a chance yet.
And we're only putting the cameras that belong to us on our streets, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So 193 Greenbelt Road, we're not touching.
We can.
We can?
As long as it's on our property.
Okay, so Lake Crest Drive would be maybe good. I have a little love-hate relationship with cameras, especially stop sign cameras. And I just know, I know that I on occasion, maybe, didn't come to a full stop. I'm fully admitting that. But I am very much aware where they are. And I'm really trying to be so much better. And I'm more aware. So this is helpful, right? So I think everyone thinks, oh, this is going to be this big money, this big money bag's going to come in once a year because the city's going to make so much money on these cameras. But really, with the stop sign cameras, I think at first now there will be some monies coming in, but that goes down very quickly. I mean, in the next year and the year after that, that will not happen. And actually, that is the goal. You want to prevent accidents. You want to prevent speeding on our roads. And I think once the speed cameras went on Cherry Hill Road, right? I think that, or Cherrywood Lane, that made a tremendous difference, I think, at the very beginning. So, yeah, so I understand the reason for cameras. Not that I always like it, but I think they're very helpful and can have a positive impact on a lot of things.
And one of the things I will add about the stop signs, while we see some inflated numbers right now, as warnings go out and the videos we post go out and all those things happen, and as soon as tickets start going out, I mean, that's going to fall, probably about 80 to 90%.
Okay, so I know, Mr. Summerall, go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would add a couple of things. The team, we've done several intervention strategies over the last year to encourage compliance with the stop sign. We did from the pilot program, we ran some tests before we came to council so that when we came asking for permission from council, we had data on those stop signs. Then we did the flashing stop signs and ran tests on those stop signs after that flashing stop sign, and we saw numbers go significantly down. But now you're looking at the data, and we're still getting a lot of violations. I think with the outreach that we're doing now, which with every other day, we're posting a new video about on someone running a stop sign, I think that's raising awareness. So we're having the impact already without a single fine being issued. And I think whatever money comes in, we'll see it in the first couple months, and then it's going to rapidly be reduced. So the threshold, I want to emphasize that while we have a speed threshold of 4 miles an hour, we don't want people testing the limits of the 4 miles an hour. We really encourage people to just stop.
Very hard to hit.
Please stop.
The hard part is to hit.
That is, that is very difficult to do, actually.
I haven't tried to have a
Easier to
slow
stop
car.
than to go 4 miles an hour.
I mean, by 4 miles, you might as well stop. I mean,
Basically stop.
you basically stopped. I tried that today. So.
If I can just get a sense of, if everybody who thinks they want to speak can raise their hand, so I get a sense of how many people. Okay, so we've got about 4. Okay. Councilmember Fritz, you had something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I want to thank Councilmember Niesel for her point about surveillance and, specifically different communities facing differing levels of surveillance. That is a choice that we're making, and enforcement is obviously very important when it comes to traffic safety. We need motorists to follow the law. This is life or death. And while we're laughing about stop signs and people stopping to 4 miles an hour can save lives, right? Slowing people down to 4 miles an hour. We're talking about our children. We're talking about our neighbors. We're talking about people with disabilities. We're talking about so many different cases here. So I understand we all find these annoying. And hopefully we will all learn the lesson very quickly, and this will not be an issue. But enforcement is one side, once again. It is not the whole solution. Engineering is just as much a problem, and we don't always have control of the engineering problems on our roads. Greenbelt Road, Capitol Beltway, a lot of these roads are not under our direct control. But these roads are not designed to be pedestrian safe. And sometimes to save lives, we're coming in after the fact. But there's a reason why we use roundabouts in engineering. There's a reason why narrowing roads works and saves lives, because people slow down when they're not on 3 empty lanes in the middle of the night. So, this is just as much an engineering problem that we have designed our lives to be car-centric. And the reason why so many of us who live around this building like this neighborhood is it wasn't designed for cars. And we feel safer walking around, and there's excellent pedestrian infrastructure. So a lot of times the people who face the largest disparities are the ones who don't benefit from those that enhanced pedestrian infrastructure and those investments. So this is about saving lives, but it is not a replacement for good engineering either. These two things need to work in tandem. I just want to say that.
And I think I saw Mr. Orlean's hand come up, and then I see Ms. Rosenthal, and then we had 2 more. I think Ms. Wilkin and somebody else I saw over there too. But we'll go and then there's 1 hand online. And as a reminder, please give your name and approximate location in Greenbelt, as well as whether or if you're not a Greenbelt resident, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Bill Orleans. I live in the walkable part of Greenbelt. I don't doubt that the license plate reader cameras and all other surveillance tools would deter crime, or at least enable the catching of the criminal or the crime to occur. We're about to mark the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. The founding of this country wasn't per se against surveillance of King George, but he did surveil a lot. I repeat an adage I learned as a relatively young person. Hasn't stood me very well in life, but I believe it still. The adage from Ben Franklin, founding revolutionary sage, that those who would give up a little liberty to ensure a little greater security in the long run will have neither. We'll lose both. I oppose all crime. Let me make that clear. I don't believe that I should steal your car, Chief Bowser, or that you should steal mine. And maybe I would, or Councilmember Fritz's car. And maybe I would take some solace that if our respective cars were stolen, there's that little eye in the sky that will catch that bastard and return the car to us. I don't think it's worth all that much. Now, everyone knows, because I say it so often, I'm an analog person. I'm not very good on my phone, but I looked up after attending ACAPS. I looked up the MCAC. I had the sequence of the letters, the acronym wrong, but I found it. And it says very clearly on its website that it works with all police agencies, federal, state, and local. And it does not, it says that it complies with state law, and that's comforting, because in Maryland, state law has some degree of assurance that for its residents that our information won't be provided to Donald Trump. But by the same token, just coincidentally between the ACAPS meeting and tonight, there was a story in the Baltimore Sun Friday or Saturday. I don't know when it was actually printed. I had an actual photocopy made of the story, where Senator Clarence Lamb was suggesting to the Sun that a loophole in Maryland state law would enable ICE to obtain personal information about a resident in the state. Now, it wasn't necessarily obtained through MCAC. It was obtained through
Please wrap up, Mr. Orleans. Your time is
Maryland
up.
Coordination and the National Justice and Public Safety Network, which has a relationship with MCAC. The NLETS.
Mr. Orleans, you need to wrap up. Your time is up.
Yes, I will conclude in 1 second. NLETS is providing apparently information to ICE, and I think we should have a greater discussion about whether we want to retain our liberty or give it up for a little more security. I think there should be more discussion.
Ms. Rosenthal.
Good evening, Laura Rosenthal, 2 Court Garden Way. I've been trying to take notes, and my thoughts may be a little scattered here, but I was a little disappointed tonight. I thought that during the petitions section where it had asked that Chief Bowers provide response, and I know he did, it was a very nice memo, but I thought it was actually going to be read aloud or explained, because it's not necessarily the same as information in the presentation. And if not that, I'm sorry that copies of the 2-page memo wasn't at the door or in the little packet that we get. It was on the big packet as pages 5 to 6 of 164 pages. So if you know how to do that, you would have found it. But again, it was just a little disappointing, because I was really impressed that the chief took the time to answer all the questions from Greenbelt Resistance Network from their last visit here. Also, the last time I was at a meeting we were talking about all this, I think was Mr. Salmaron said, this has been discussed many times before. Really, you can look up, the previous discussions. And so some of the city council members and some of the staff members helped me identify 4 different times: March of last year, April of last year, November of last year, January of this year. And so I felt like I was really up to date. But really, all of it was about these stop sign cameras. And really, there's been a lot of publicity. I have the little thing here of the stop sign cameras. So it leads you to believe that that's the only cameras that are in the city. Whereas, as we know now, they're only 10%. There's 136 other cameras. So I'm not sure whether the city council or the public has really, up till tonight, talked about these other cameras and that have very different things that they do. Also, I think someone mentioned tonight that these stop sign cameras are using a different vendor, right, where they actually are being rented for $1,000 per camera and then $8.50 per infraction or something like that. So that wasn't covered tonight. So we have a couple of different programs going on, and I think that, again, might be confusing to people. Someone said, no, they bought them. Like, no, they're renting them. So we were, like, not always in agreement with our facts. The last thing is in the Maryland General Assembly, they passed HB 444, which is about the immigration enforcement prohibition, so prohibiting the 287G agreements all over the state. And I know that in Greenbelt, we're already doing that. And then tonight, I think they're trying to pass HB 264, Maryland Data Privacy and Protection Act. So I'm just wondering, when there's a lot of discussion of the words, and then I will finish up, legitimate law enforcement or criminal investigation. So is MCAC honoring the fact that an immigration thing is not a law enforcement thing and it's not a criminal investigation? So is there any way that they're going to find a loophole that immigration is actually a crime? Or do you think they're going to honor these two state laws that have just been passed, and also, just like Greenbelt, not be providing any information about immigration? So I guess that's my only question. I'm looking for an
I'll
answer.
just say this, I don't believe at any point any employee of MCAC who are generally state police employees are going to violate state law. And there is an audit that's submitted by any agency that uses them to the state, and I think it goes to the legislative committee. And so it's probably on a website somewhere, each year's annual audit, and every agency. So we submit our data to MCAC, so we're not required to do an audit, but any agency that houses their own data is required to submit an audit to MCAC or to GOCAP. So all of those things have to be submitted, so they're all up there, and that is how they do it. And honestly, again, I don't foresee any state employee intentionally violating a state law.
Right, next. And well, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Wilkin. And while I'm going to push back a little bit on Ms. Rosenthal, because actually all of the questions were answered in Chief Bauer's presentation, with the exception of how many vehicles have been apprehended exclusively using the camera data. And Chief Bowers responded to that one. The department does not track apprehensions based solely on camera system data, as such systems are not used as the sole basis for enforcement action. Instead, they serve as an investigative tool in conjunction with other evidence, which he referenced but didn't specifically answer. But I think actually every single other point in those questions was covered in the slides, maybe not in the same order. So I think double check that, but I think he did cover all of it. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Wilkin.
Hi, Christine Wilkin, Ridge Road. A couple things. So can the audit of the police department and the searches be done by the city rather than the police department auditing themselves? Secondly, can we not share the data with MCAC, or, like, is that required? Because it sounds like that's another place where data can be leaked. And we don't really necessarily feel at Greenbelt Resistance Network that the results that we're achieving, even though it is like solving crime, homicide cases, car thefts, is really worth the privacy that we're compromising. So we don't want any more cameras being put into the city. And rather, crime could be solved by officers doing police work and the cameras that are already existing, but no more additional cameras. And I'm also noticed that in the presentation that you said that the police could respond pretty quickly to a crime when it's happening. How is that able to happen? Like how much are the cameras, like, is that AI or something that's able to, like, how are we able to respond to a car theft as it's happening and apprehend it right away? Thanks.
So to answer your question rather quickly, there's no AI built into the system. There's nobody watching it. What happens is if there's a vehicle that's on a hot list, right, which means it's already reported as a stolen vehicle, the owner realized it's gone, called the police, and it was reported, or there's a vehicle listed as a wanted vehicle because it was used in a felony, or it's an Amber Alert vehicle or a Silver Alert vehicle. As that passes through one of the readers, the computer will say ABC 123. It will compare it to the hot list. It'll go, aha, there's a match. And it will alert our communication staff that, aha, I have a match of Maryland ABC 123. And it is now at, Hanover and Mandan. And that's how you can respond, because now you know that ABC 123 is there. It's a Silver Alert vehicle, and we're able to respond and quickly locate that Silver Alert vehicle and that driver of that vehicle who was reported missing, right? So that's the idea. It's not that some AI is watching, right? Because we don't have that technology. Now, I will tell you that places like 7-Eleven actually do. So if you go to a 7-Eleven and you commit a crime in 7-Eleven, they pay for these security monitoring systems that
will have some device that watches the screen and can tell their clerks, hey, there's somebody stealing in your store. Now, we don't have anything like that. The software that we have is not even capable of that. There are different vendors that sell things like gun detectors and things that look at cameras. The schools use it a lot, but we don't have that anywhere in our system.
You wanted to respond to that, Councilmember Fritz?
It's a very, to the point about surveillance with technology versus having more officers do it. You know, I'll just say that 6 years ago we had a national discussion on, do we want more traffic stops by officers, right? Some people were arguing that we want more automated enforcement because it might be more impartial, right? Because there are still disparities, and I can't speak to Greenbelt specifically, but if you look at Maryland-wide, the rates at which motorists are stopped is still is very highly determined by race. And, oftentimes when we see interactions in the news that go negatively, especially disproportionately are impacting our Black and brown neighbors, a lot of times those are initiated as traffic stops. So do we want more humans doing more traffic stops is a national discussion that I don't think we got a resolution to in the last 6 years. But sometimes technology can be more impartial and can simply say, slow down, or stop at this stoplight, or it could also, there are other potential usages that sends a reminder. It says, hey, update your registration, rather than have an officer use their time to pull someone over, and then that might proceed to an investigation or a search of their car or something else that oftentimes doesn't yield anything. And that can also harm community relations when people feel like they're being over-policed. So I will say that the technology is not neutral, but neither is having officers stop people. Ideally, those stops, when they occur, are brief. But there are racial equity implications of saying we need more traffic stops as well.
I think there was one more hand over here. Oh, we have two more now. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Brian Voith. I'm on 6 Ridge Road. We've been talking all over this topic, and we've talked a lot about it and covered a lot of information. But one of the main things that concerns me is just the new technology and the potential for abuse. I mean, because we're just getting started with this technology. I mean, just imagine 5 years, 10 years down the road where we could be with this. The potential for abuse, to me, is almost unlimited. So I just think that, doing this, we just have to, somebody has to be like minding the store and like making sure that, and you know what happens with the, we have not a great track record with monitoring our technology and making sure that it's used, for the best of everybody. And that's all I wanted to say. I just think we have to be very cautious.
Mr. Hartman, I saw your hand. And I do see the two hands online. We'll get to you. We're going to finish up in the room, and then we'll get to the two hands online.
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Gardenware. In addition to the really serious questions that have been asked, I want to take advantage of Chief Bowers being here to ask 2 questions that have occurred to me. They're more technical questions. The first is these stop sign cameras are in one particular place. Do they cover all the stop signs at that intersection, or just one?
They only cover one angle.
Okay. So only one stop sign is recorded.
So if it's a 4-way stop and you only see one camera, it's only getting the one side.
Okay. Second one, on the speed cameras, like the one on Crescent Road, I always try and figure out which way the camera faces. And does it face both sides? Because if it faces one side, people coming one way, then people going the other way, they're not going to have a reduction in speed, or unless it's both ways, because I assume the purpose is to protect the people who are coming out of whatever was the school at St. Hugh. So going both ways, it's very important to slow down. So is it one way, both ways, or what?
Well, Michael, I don't feel like I should give you the answer to that one. Just leave it as a mystery.
Well,
Of course, it's both ways, right, Michael?
I can, I'll
We
submit
already
an
spilled some beans
FOIA
today,
to-
you know, with this 4-mile-per-hour thing, so.
Speed cameras, generally, the way that they do work is we're only allowed to photograph the rear of a vehicle. So if you're oncoming to a speed camera, it's not taking your picture because we're not allowed to photograph the driver. We can only take a picture of the back of the car and the tag.
Okay, so the speed is not recorded. If it's after the fact, it's too late. So anyway, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you drive a little fast today, or?
Actually, I have been yelled, honked when I stop at a stop sign, and people think it's passive aggressiveness,
Yeah.
which is an issue. So.
True.
Okay, anybody else in the room? Okay, Cynthia N., you're online. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to thank Councilmember Niesel for raising her objection to surveillance in general. I also share that position. I'm a member of Greenbelt Resistance Network, and I live on Laurel Hill Road. Just want to add that. Surveillance has a lot of impact on people's psychological well-being, knowing you're under surveillance, especially for communities that tend to be over-policed. We all know those are typically Black and brown communities and poor communities. So I think we have to consider things like that, the psychological well-being of people who are constantly under surveillance. I also think about, well, you know, what if all the money that we're spending on all these surveillance cameras would be put into youth programs, jobs programs, cares, you know, things that truly help our community and truly address people's needs rather than surveilling people and charging them for not stopping at a stop sign or, you know, that kind of thing. Really tackle some of the roots of crime rather than just surveilling it and capturing it. I also think about what are some community accountability for traffic violations and other violations. Why does it need to be in police hands? Can there be community education in some forms where we, you know, look out for each other and talk to each other about the, you know, impacts of some of these traffic violations? And then in terms of data storage, any data stored is data that can be accessed. As we all know, the current regime that we're living under has absolutely no care about laws and which laws they break. And, you know, if an administration changes in Maryland, then all that data that MCAC has could potentially be accessed. So we can't just think about who's in power right now in the state in Greenbelt. Hopefully we never become a right-wing city, but we have to think about the future and who could have access to data and who could just break the law and take it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy Legendre.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Chief Bowers and his staff for all of the information and data collected in order to answer the questions presented back on March 22nd. I am a firm believer in this technology. I believe these tools assist our officers in protecting the community, especially the cameras in the high crime areas. Like, I'm not going to speak to that because I do not know which areas they are, but I think they should continue to be used. They are tools, again, for the officers, and also losing a tiny bit of privacy is worth the reduction in crime. And people need to realize that crime is on the rise and crime is not going away. So any tools that our officers can use to help reduce, to make our community safer, I am 100% for. I wish we had more officers to take the time could have the time to, as Mr. Fritz referred to, as the traffic stops, because there are so many bad actors picked up from traffic stops that being inconvenienced for 5 minutes, a good citizen being inconvenienced for 5 minutes is worth the time and effort so we can pick up, so the officers can go ahead and take away the bad actors and have them prosecuted as required by law. So I'm in favor of all of this. I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and so I
Get my
think,
point across that.
so one thing I would request is if we can make sure we get these slides up on, because I know there's a landing page about the cameras, and make sure that we get these slides up and the written answers as well. I think the more information we can share, the better. And also, I know the police have been doing a lot of posts. I've seen the social media posts about why we need cameras, but I think it would also be a good idea to include some of these other things about how the data is used, where the data is stored, who can access it, what are the rules about who can access it, and include some of that information. I think is going to be helpful as part of the social media promotion.
Just so I'm clear, we'll do we can definitely do the web page, the city web page, update the LPR section with the new information and then the slides and the answers and all that kind of good stuff. When you talk about the other piece on the social media, are you talking about all of the different programs that you'd like to see, or just this? Because we've been really focused right now on stop sign. So I don't want to confuse people.
Yeah,
with what
maybe
they
you're
are.
right. I just think that the questions that people have are about, but I think even related to the stop signs, it's how is the data used? And I think the same questions apply in the sense that this data is only being used for traffic violations. It's being deleted after, like if there's not a violation, your data gets deleted, all that sort. I think just going beyond the mechanics and how it's a deterrent, but also into some of the questions that have come up. We maybe start out related to the stop sign cameras, since that's the focus right now, but just also some of those rules.
Yes,
about
ma'am.
how the
We'll
data.
take care of both. We'll work on the social media portion, and once we get through the warning phase, we can do some social media on the other systems as well. I just don't want to do.
No, actually, not confusing
I don't want to
things.
confuse
Yes,
anybody
yeah,
by
yeah.
all of a sudden putting up LPR stuff, and then that gets confused with stop sign. So we'll update the LPR web page on the city's website. We'll get that taken care of this week, and then I'll have the social media folks work on the other thing for the stop sign.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ms. McKinney.
Sorry, just one last thing. I think, one of the gentlemen said, policies are changing. Technology is changing pretty quickly. And I know that you all have been working on this for some time, but it may make sense to look at what is our data privacy governance policy, and do we need to update that? Because it does seem like there's some concern or not clarity on how we are utilizing that. So I know we have one, but maybe there is some way we can look more deeply at that in collaboration with the policies that the police department has related to these cameras, right? So there's the city policy, and then there's what the police department is doing with these specific cameras. It seems like there needs to be a little bit of a union between how that data is being governed and how we're communicating that out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so item 8 is minutes. We didn't have any minutes for this meeting. So item 9 is administrative reports. Mr. Samaron. Thank you, Chief Bowers. And thank you for all the residents who came out this evening. We appreciate you coming, both online and those in the room that took the time to come and think about this and comment.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Weaver. Included in the administrative reports is our geospatial roadmap plan for the administration. I want to thank Councilmember Pompey, who joined 3 of our, the whole sessions, which were 3 meetings. One was an initial intake, and then an in-person collecting all the inputs, and then a final meeting to review all the recommendations. So I've submitted for your review the roadmap plan for the administration. Every department that participated and has a similar plan, and this will guide our GIS integration and development work. So I welcome any feedback or any questions you may have. There were some difficult things to face. You know, we are aware of a lot of the issues, but we really don't have tools to execute the GIS data recommendations. But we're planning to put those in place. For example, one that we regularly get criticism of is some of our project updates. We have a lot of projects on the works, and I feel that we do a good job of putting the announcement out, but I think it's oversaturation of information for some of our residents when we use Facebook and all this information is going on one channel. And if you just don't catch it at the moment, the relevant information may be buried in the numerous posts that we put out. So it's difficult to catch the right audience at the right time. But this roadmap is going to help us do that a little better, so that we can target the audience with the right information. So that's included in the report. This Saturday's activity were great. We have the Little League kickoff. We got to unveil all the improvements to our facilities and also public art. So thank you all for coming out. It was great weather and well-attended events. I think we had over 400 individuals at the Little League kickoff. On to the administrative report. We're continuing to do budget work, and budget is, while we submitted our formal proposal, we still have a lot of work to do on the budget with all the work sessions and a few changes that we expect throughout the budget process. The PEPCO, I'm excited to announce that we have a resolution on the overbilling that was done for the city for numerous years. So we agreed to 2 levels of credit, one for 36 months prior to signing the inventory, and then a final adjustment once we finalize the inventory. So this gets us a step closer to resolving the billing issues, but also this builds the inventory of the lights that we will be working towards, whether we acquire them and convert them to LEDs, or should council decide to continue to have PEPCO maintain and service those lights and upgrade them. I can go on all these items, but I welcome any council. Oh, one major project that's kicking off tomorrow is we will have to close the parking lot for the community center and library to do excavation work to run an electrical service line from a transformer into the EV charging stations. So the reason we're doing this work overnight is that we have the daycare, nursery, the library, and the community center having regular activities from 8 a.m. all the way up until 9:30. So during that time period, there's just really no good time to close the access road for the parking lot for extended hours. So we're doing that work overnight. It is costing us additional money to have work done overnight. We found it to be the most, minimize the impact to the users of our facilities.
And will it be one night or more than one night?
Well, it's 2 nights of work. One night is to do the excavation, and then the inspection team will come in on the daytime. And if the inspection, everything goes well, the team will pour concrete that same night. And then in 3 days, we should be done. Now, while the road is excavated to put in the encased conduit, there will be steel plates during the day to allow access to the parking lot.
Okay.
Any questions on the administrative report?
Questions for Mr. Salmaron? And I did have a couple of things about the geospatial roadmap, but I don't want to get into it now because it's already 9:30. But what are the next steps with that, and will there be another opportunity to have some conversation about that?
So we have, the first step is designating a GIS champion, somebody that's going to own, live GIS, breathe GIS, and just push us on GIS. And we have that person in the room. That's Kevin is our GIS champion. So a lot of the work is going to be led by Kevin. With Kevin, we've identified some of what we think is early wins to get momentum. So the approach to the work is multifaceted. One, we need to do internal capacity building. We need to do some value sharing, language sharing, because GIS sounds like a scary thing, and it doesn't have to be. Depending on what team folks are on or what department, GIS data integration means different things. So for example, one of the things that we will be doing, that Kevin's actually working on, is telematics for our vehicles. So the telematics is really something that the driver doesn't see. It's a device that gets plugged in on a port on the car that is able to read the location, the speed, and do all kinds of analysis on the vehicle. The drivers won't even know it's there. Obviously, they'll be aware that it's there, But that device would tell us a lot of things about the vehicle maintenance requirements. Does it need an oil change or tires low on air? And that information we've fed to our fleet management system. For our snow operations, these devices will tell us where our tow trucks are. Sorry, our snow plows are. So we'll be able to tell in real time which streets have we plowed, how many times, and what road conditions they're on. So those drivers, they don't need to know how to enter GIS coordinates into a system, but it's important that they understand that they also have a role in our GIS roadmap. Kevin's a lot wiser on these things than I am, and that's why he's the champion on this, but he'll be leading this work. Did I answer your question?
Sort of. I had some specific comments, but I'll send some questions later. It's just a couple questions about how it all was going to work in different ways it might feed into some of things. For example, our budget work session on Wednesday is capital projects, trying to get a better sense of the geographic distribution. I mean, this also relates to the cameras that we were talking about tonight, right? That if how can we get to the point where a lot of the work we're doing in the city is represented geographically so that we can actually answer these questions very easily and here's where the projects are being done, here's where the next bike lanes we're doing, where is that in the city, and have it visually on the map. That was more what I was getting at.
Yeah, and there's a solution for that. So they are.
I was,
Okay,
I asked
perfect.
these very questions during the meeting. We talked about it. There are solutions for all of this, but as Mr. Summeron said, it is a process. We cannot do everything all at once, both because of knowledge, because of money, because all of these things. But that is absolutely something that we talked about, and how important that will be for when we look at our budget, when we look at equity and funding and all of these things. And I'm actually very excited about the possibilities. And I think the residents will be too. There will be ways. I mean, once we get into it, there could be ways that there could be like real-time updates on projects online, where the money is, like how much money has been spent, like where we are on the project, like, how long it has to go. So I think that it's got a lot of possibilities that are going to really serve our residents and the council very well. So
Excellent. Okay. Any other particular questions for Mr. Summeron? I see Mr. Orlean's hand there. I would just remind folks that Wednesday's work session is Public Works and Greenbelt Connection and capital projects for the budget. And next week on Monday, we have the general miscellaneous grants and contributions, not the contribution groups, but the general grants and contributions. CARES and the Greenbelt Cinema is on Monday, and the Recreation Department is on Wednesday, the 22nd, on Earth Day. So those are the budget work sessions that are coming up next. Mr. Orleans.
Bill Orleans, reference on page 57 of the full agenda is to attached plan. Please review the attached plan. The foregoing pages seem less of a plan and more of a description of the training and maybe the benefits of using ESRI product. So my question is, where's the plan? I don't think the plan where the pages foregoing page 57 it's not in the package. Does it exist on the website? Where is the plan? And I'd be interested in each department's plan, because given the discussion we just had, I'm particularly interested in what the police department's geospatial intentions are. Thank you very much.
Well, I think the blue background pages, I think it is in there. Can you scroll down, Ms. Lashley Mullen?
What page is that? 35.
Yeah, I think keep going. This is the description of the project. Although I will say this is a little hard to read. It got a little blurry in the Zoom. I mean, these pages are the plan, right? To a certain extent?
Yes, so the page that is, in terms of a plan, it's a work plan, what are actionable items to take? They are listed on, it would be page 41 of 164 pages. It lists the goals, the current state, and what is the desired direction to take on that goal or workflow. So that gives us direction of what is the next step to do. So that it's included in the packet. There is a similar report to this for all of the departments. Then there's also dashboards. The sample dashboards provided is using real data that's available to us through the ESRI platform. So it gives us things for in the example provided here, if you, there you go, there's a workflow overview, but I'm looking at page 46, when we can look at population growth, total number of businesses, we're looking at healthcare spending, at-risk population. There's all kinds of data that we can pull from to use as a guide on our work. So this is a sample of the data. With more work, we can tailor specific dashboards to meet our work goals or our data goals.
So I think pieces of this are the plan, and then there's also some other information, although I think we need to work to make this an accessible document, because I don't think it would be readable by a screen reader.
No, probably not, and I think is the challenge of our archival system that we have to export to PDF. So what this is available to all the Esri users on a interactable website.
Right.
To get that to distribution, there's only really two ways. One is PDF file or invite people onto the Esri platform, which we're not there to just open it up to.
Well, that may be something to think about, a way to make some of this plan information more in a way that's not the story map, but is also a little bit more accessible.
Right.
I think.
Right, and this is an example. Well, this is a report that we received. It's not meant for public consumption. We're sharing it with council, so you have an idea of the direction we're taking with the Esri roadmap.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so at this point, we're at item number 10, a public hearing. So on the utility tax rate. So at this point, I am calling a recess of the regular meeting for a public hearing on the proposed public utility tax rate of $202.50 for fiscal year 2027. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public comments and to formally consider the establishment of the public utility tax rate for fiscal year 2027. So are there any public comments about, I guess you have some slides to present, Mr. Salmarone?
I have a few slides that I want to present. I think it's important to just to reiterate what is it that we're doing. So what is the public utility tax? First, we'll start with the statute. The statute allows, there's two aspects to the statute. One, the statute allows the municipalities to set the annual tax rate for property subject to municipal property taxes every year. The second, there is specific tax law around public utility operating properties excess and a portion by the state, and then subsequently the county and the municipalities. Well, specifically, what the public utility tax does, it allows us to tax the operating property for public utilities. That includes real property such as land and buildings. It also includes personal property such as telephone, electric poles, towers, lines, cables, meters, transmission, distribution mains, and any other equipment used to operate the utility. So very, very, very broad. All right, here's a list of 10 municipalities just in Prince George's County that levy a municipal utility tax rate. Brentwood at $2 for every $100 of assessed value. District Heights at $2. North Brentwood at $2. Riverdale Park $2. Colmar Manor $2.25. Berwyn Heights $2.50. Capitol Heights $2.50. Mount Rainier $2.75. Forest Heights $3, and Bladensburg at $3.25. So the lowest is $2, the highest being $3.25, with the average being $2.42. What we're proposing is a rate of $2.50 that matches Berwyn Heights, Capitol Heights, but below Mount Rainier, Forest Heights, and Bladensburg, and about 5 municipalities now at $2.25 or below. The proposed public utility tax rate would generate approximately $110,000 in additional annual reoccurring revenue, and this will provide a reoccurring revenue stream to support city's operations, and it would help us reduce the structural budget pressure and that we have seen for 2 years and now going into the third year. That's public utility tax in a nutshell.
Okay, so this is now, we're in the public hearing, so if there are comments.
Laura Rosenthal, 2 Garden Way. I know you're supposed to have a comment ready, which I only have a question ready. Who is getting taxed? Are we getting taxed, or like Pepco is going to get taxed and the phone companies are going to get taxed. So, yeah, where's the money coming from? Thank you.
Right. The latter, the utility companies will be taxed.
So this will not increase our tax rate.
No, this is not a tax on our residents. One thing I would disclose is, utilities like to pass on the cost to the customers, and I imagine that at some point, the utility companies would ask for adjustments.
Mr. Orleans?
I apologize for not reading this before tonight, but I heard the city manager suggest there are comparisons with adjacent jurisdictions, and that unfortunately is not in the 2.5 pages relevant to this agenda item. I think I heard him suggest that Greenbelt should take the middle ground and tax less than Bladensburg, but on par with Berwyn Heights. I'd be interested in knowing, in fact, seeing in print what the rates of other jurisdictions are, and knowing the rationale for taxing them at a lesser rate than some jurisdictions would. But a lot on the second page into the third, relevant to this agenda item, a lot of forms below an Adobe PDF. I don't know if all these are just forms, or if the forms indicate some analysis as to what goes into the completion of the forms. Because if it's the latter, I'm interested in seeing what Pepco and Verizon and who are the others? Comcast? Whoever they are. I'd be interested in knowing their analysis and the content of their forms before suggesting what our rate for their taxes should be. So generally, Mr. Council, Mr. Salomon, is that information available that's included on the forms that they presumably have to fill out? And why you're suggesting we tax at a lesser rate than Bladensburg? Thank you very much.
So that previously you had asked the question, where are the tables? We did include tables, an excerpt of 2 pages on the public utility tax for municipalities in Prince George's County. So we did not include everyone in the state, but we did include the ones just in Prince George's County, and that's on page, I can't see the page number on my screen, but page 66 of the packet. So they start there. The $2.50 is a bump from our current property or personal property tax of $1.72 that the businesses have to provide, and that covers a lot of the real estate property and personal property for the utilities. But we believe there's more opportunity by raising the taxes, obviously, which is why we're proposing $2.50. A driver there is to really keep us in line with the peers around us. So primarily Berwyn Heights that's across the street. We don't want to be too above what the surrounding municipalities are. So in short, we didn't start with a revenue figure in mind. We said, okay, there's a revenue opportunity here. What will be a fair assessment? And that question of revenue opportunity, for multiple years now, we have been asked by some council members to explore all revenue opportunities that did not involve a direct increase on property taxes for residents. So this is an example of a revenue opportunity that we see other municipalities leveraging, and we thought that it would be a good one for us to leverage.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Mr. Orleans. I don't know what forms you're talking about. I don't even see that in the packet.
Mr. Orleans, if you want help accessing the form online afterwards, I'm sure we can send you the link to access the forms online.
Oh,
it's a printed out. It's a PDF of a printed out page. You're asking for hyperlinks. Yes, we could. I'm sure someone can email you or provide you a link to the other documents. But those.
Thank you very much, sir. But that might not be necessary. What I was asking was, was on these forms is their content as to the nature of their business and an argument from their perspective of what they should be taxed or not. Is this more than just a form that's filled out, or does it contain analysis of what's being asked of them?
Yeah, so we don't do the analysis.
This is,
non-form.
yeah, we need to sort this
Yeah.
out later. This is not related to the, yeah, well, we can answer your question later, Mr. Orleans.
Yeah, I'll clarify that page 58, Mr. Orleans, is there for the purposes of demonstrating to the public what is the taxing authority of our municipality and what it is at the state level. So that printout on page 58 is the Department of Assessment and Taxation's page about public utility valuation and franchise tax unit. So it spells out what the law authorizes. And then if anyone wants to do more research, you can look up the corresponding tax code and the forms that are associated with. That was not meant for us to get into the forms themselves, but rather what is the municipality's authority to implement this tax and what we're able to tax.
Okay. Any other comments on the utility tax? Okay. At this point, we end the public hearing and go back to the regular meeting. So the next item is item 11 for the resolution for the standing rules. I introduced this for first reading, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for second reading as well. So I move for second reading and adoption a resolution to repeal and reenact with amendments resolution number 2109 to adopt revised standing rules for the Council of the City of Greenbelt, Maryland.
Second.
We've talked about these a lot. Anybody want to make any final comments on these before we vote? Any council members want to make any comments? Okay, Ms. Davis.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. Mostly questions, but a comment at the end. First of all, when does this go into effect if it is passed tonight?
I guess we have something, isn't there something about when they become effective in the standing rules?
We talked about so many standing rules. Okay.
Because if you pass it tonight, in a few minutes, then you're already breaking your standing rule because your meeting is already 2 hours.
Too long.
Right, we would have to vote to extend it. That had occurred to me.
Okay. Also, I want to thank you for withdrawing the issue about removing the Pledge of Allegiance from the meeting. I think that would have caused a great division in the city. I understand the reasons for why it was put there, but I also know the reasons why people still want to keep it in. However, I remain concerned about having to sign in for specific issues. The form you have tonight is not adequate for that. It says, do you want to, are you speaking for a petition or not? So where do I put the issue so you would know where I'm going to put my hand up? So you might need to change the form so that you can write down the issue or the part of the agenda that you're going to speak for. 'Cause it's very confusing. Another question is, how will Zoom people or people on TV, how are they going to sign up before the meeting starts? And especially because maybe some of them have not even looked at the agenda, so they won't even know the agenda issues until you start talking about them. So that's another issue. My biggest issue and concern is about spontaneous questions. Just tonight, when I was listening to the discussion about license plate readers, all of a sudden I came up with questions, and I would not even have thought about those questions because I was listening to the discussion. So in the middle of discussions, you're going to come up with questions, and you have not addressed that in here. I know that I've been assured that I can maybe run up with a piece of paper, and then the city clerk will run up to somebody and tell that somebody back in the row wants to ask a question. But by the time that occurs, we could be way past the issue. And you need to have that in there someplace because spontaneous questions are going to come up all the time. So perhaps it's not been council's intent. I think it still is to be considered that you are causing an unacceptable restriction of public comment and participation. As I said, I don't think it's your intent that you want to do that, but that's going to be the result. People are just not going to want to go through all of that to come and make a comment, and people will just sit home and democracy will die. Thank you.
I believe we changed that language to may sign in so that there is wiggle room for if things come up. Yeah, that was,
Sure, because that
Yeah.
was a discussion we had as well.
yeah,
About all those points and change
Yeah.
the language specifically for those points.
yeah. So we've addressed that. Ms. Rosenthal.
Laura Rosenthal, 2 Court Garden Way. Pretty much just echoing what Ms. Davis said, but I don't know if you took this back out, but it looked like at one point it was like you could only speak to 2 of the issues. Like, I know sometimes the mayor gets upset when I actually speak to every issue, because if I'm going to stay here till 10 o'clock at night till item number 15, I'm probably going to have something to say about each issue before that. So was that left back out?
I think we said you can't speak twice on the same issue.
But you can speak to more than 2 issues.
Yeah,
right?
I don't believe we put any restriction on speaking to multiple issues. We did put in a restriction for council members can only speak twice on an issue
Right.
before we have to make a vote to continue debate.
Right, and just to reiterate, yeah, very definitely, you do not know what you want to talk about till you get here, because you don't even know what half the issues are. Because you might, like, I may have come here for 2 issues, but the others interest me as well. So I would think you would encourage citizen participation, or else we'd have to just keep running back and forth to the sign-in sheet and adding our names again. So thanks. So
Well, again-
it's good you change it to may instead of shall. Yeah.
I think we've talked about all of these points already. So, anyone else from council want to comment, or should we go ahead and vote? Do we need? Did you want to say something, or do?
Do a roll call?
I think we might need to do a roll call vote. Yeah. So, no, we had a motion and we seconded.
Motion and a second.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the motions at the beginning of action items before we start discussion, because that's the way we're supposed to do it. So, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Niesel,
Yes.
Councilmember McKinney, Councilmember Pompey,
Yes.
Councilmember Pope, Mayor Pro Tem Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan is absent. Motion passed.
Okay, so next up is the, what's that? I think it's a question we probably technically should, I don't know if the rules go into effect in the middle of a meeting. I think it should probably apply to the next meeting and not tonight, but that is something to keep in mind, that we should apply it. I think it's just too confusing if we start in the middle of tonight's meeting. Okay, so item number 12 is amended declaration of covenants for 7010 Greenbelt Road, also known as Greenbelt Crossing. And so I believe this is an action item that needs approval. So before we start discussion, do I have a motion to put a motion on the floor?
Sure. I'll move that council approve the revised agreement so it may be recorded in the land records of Prince George's County.
Second.
Well,
Okay, I'll second it.
but Ms. Ruby, I think you're going to explain it to us.
Yes, exactly. It memorializes agreement that the council has already acted on previously. It was just never, if you like, formalized within the covenant agreement, which should be recorded in the land records of Prince George's County. So the council over the years has supported the redevelopment of 7010 Greenbelt Road, also called Greenbelt Crossing, which is currently under construction. Originally, the covenant agreement the city entered into restricted the development to 90 condominium or co-op units. Over time, various development proposals were presented to the council, and ultimately the property owner came to the city asking for support for 95 age-restricted units. We basically supported a zoning text amendment that allowed an increased density for senior housing. And so the total was 95. We just never, we were remiss, if you will, in revising the covenants and getting it recorded into the land records. So this will do that. It's just a formality. I did promise council I'd come with a little update on the development, so I do have that to share. NVR Homes has started the first building. They expect that to be completed by the end of the year. So they are a few months behind what we had originally anticipated. We thought it would be in more closer to the fall. The second building, they expect to be done. They're in permitting right now for the second building, and they hope that one will become online in the spring. And then there's a total of 4 buildings. And then building number 3 will be 4 months after building number 2, and the last building will be 8 months after building number 3. We will coordinate with the developer as probably closer to the fall to come and do a community meeting, because we know a lot of citizens are interested and about how they can, get priority for sale and things like that. So we will work to get that information out in a timely manner to our citizens.
And so is the expectation that when they open the first building, once they have that open, they would continue constructing the rest of them simultaneously? So the first one would be occupied while they complete the construction of the others?
Yes, so then the second one will come online, then the third one, and then the fourth one.
And yes, Ms. Pope.
Do you know if they have, it might be a little too early to tell, but their idea of how much these condos are going to cost, are they still in the same track, or?
I don't have current pricing on that. I can certainly inquire if they have that available at this time and share that information.
I just wonder if something has changed,
Any other questions?
Sorry, I think it was a comment. I feel like when they came and talked to us, they shared some pricing that was similar to another community. Yeah, that they already
did,
had.
and I just don't recall what that pricing
Yeah,
was.
okay.
I think it was the low 400s.
That's what I think
I
too.
remember being
Yeah,
very
I thought
high.
it was
Yeah.
maybe 3 high as 5, but I couldn't. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
recall.
But I'm just wondering, if are we still there, or has it gone like up, or maybe possibly down a little bit? Which
Where will we be in
of course,
December
that's-
is probably the bigger question.
That's wishful thinking going down, right? But I just want to make sure that we're not going totally wild. I mean, we had an expectation that it also has to be somewhat, if I'm going to say this word, it's going to sound terrible, affordable, right?
This
Well, it's
project
market
is not.
rate. This
it
is
did
going to
not
be a
have that
market rate.
characteristic. Market
Okay.
rate.
It's age restricted, but not income restricted.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from council? I see your hand, Mr. Orleans. Go ahead.
Of course, it's market rate. In the 22 years I've been back in Greenbelt, this is one of 5 housing developments proposed in Greenbelt. All of them are market rate. Greenbelt Council never requests or insists from developers to build any component, any element of their project at less than market rate. But maybe it's not too late. As I read this, and it's a very quick skim, this is an amended covenant because there was an oversight earlier that it was not executed appropriately. Maybe it's not too late for council, recognizing that not everybody can afford a $450,000 condominium in Greenbelt, on Greenbelt Road, should insist that some of these additional units be allocated through a lottery process, certainly not going to favorite former members of council or others in town, but on a random basis, a lottery
Mr.
basis.
Orleans, please keep your comments
A
germane.
lottery basis to 5 potential Greenbelt residents who, at less than market rate, would like to move into this property. Council might finally consider an affordable element in a project that it's approving of or covenant it's approving.
I think you misunderstand the authority council has to insist on those sorts of provisions. So this is not a resolution, so is this just a voice vote? Voice vote. What's that? Yeah, Ms. Davis.
Despite the snide remark that was made by the previous speaker, I shall also make a comment that if he had read one of the news articles in the Washington Post, Jay Davis, Greenbelt East, Washington Post articles this past week said, throughout the DC area, there is a problem with construction, period, and whatever construction is being permitted is market value or up. So it is not just a question or a problem with Greenbelt, it is all over because the developers, being capitalists, want to make money. And unless you have a charity that can provide subsidies or a government that can provide very hefty subsidies, you cannot get what Mr. Orleans was asking for. It's very, very difficult. It would be nice, but it's very, very difficult in our particular form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Okay, all in favor of formalizing the amended Declaration of Covenants? I can't talk.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That brings us to item 13, discussion of a proposed charter amendment regarding collective bargaining rights. So this is just a discussion item. So we have a proposed charter amendment for review and discussion. I don't know if you want to frame this up for us, Mr. Salmaron.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Weaver. This is the proposed language based on the last conversation that council had with our legal team. The language, the red line document, shows what the proposed changes are. This essentially covers what we think all the employees, with the exception of the part-time employees. The legal team and staff are trying to figure out how do we make the separation of the part-time staff. The city code draft language and the next item does provide some guidance on the part-time staff. That group has been challenging to find what is a distinguishing feature of the part-time. So one of the items we discussed in the last work session were the lifeguards and how to distinguish returning lifeguards. Well, we have one job classification for part-time lifeguards, and some of them are here just for one season. Others return for the same season year after year. And then there's other part-time lifeguards that are here throughout the year because we run a pool all year round. We have an indoor and outdoor pool. So we couldn't say part-time lifeguards because there's just within that group, there are different part-timers. So the community of interest piece is going to be key figuring out in the draft language. But for the purpose of the charter amendment, the item that I want to point out to you is the all full-time, non-exempt, non-managerial, non-confidential employees of the city of Greenbelt. That's the very broad definition. Then it gets into the 3 bargaining units that council wanted to highlight. They wanted a multiple bargaining units. So one will be the sworn police officers. Second will be covered employees working in the Department of Public Works. And 3, covered employees working on all other departments of the city.
And the reason there are some things that our city solicitor looked at and said needed to be adjusted before we can put it on for final vote. That's one of the reasons why it's just discussion tonight, correct?
Correct. So we have 2 legal teams. Well, on this particular item, we have the labor attorneys, which are the Jackson Lewis attorneys, and then we have our city solicitor, which is Jason Deloach. The resolution was prepared by the Jackson Lewis team, who are labor attorneys, and it has to be reviewed by our city solicitor, which is an administrative law attorney. And he identified some challenges that he couldn't get to on Friday because he was on the bench, had several trials. So we pulled it off, and we'll bring it back on the 27th with a resolution. It would also need to repeal the previous charter amendment done by council. So if you recall back in January, council adopted a charter amendment to allow Public Works to unionize. So that charter amendment would need to be repealed.
Replaced with this.
Replaced with a new one.
Okay. Councilmember Fritz.
So the charter, it's not, a definition of full-time would not appear in the charter. It's just kind of memorialized here, and then I guess what is the reference point? Because I'm still a little fuzzy on why
full-time?
What full-time what set of workers are full-time? When would someone cross that threshold? Because I've talked to folks in different departments, and there are folks who might teach many classes in a given week, right? And they might have different pay codes for all those different classes. And, you know, is that person, if they cross a certain hour threshold, considered a full-time, or is that person exempt regardless of how many hours they work because the individual jobs they are working, let's say in as an arts instructor, or, you know, in teaching some other class, right? They have an employment status. I saw in the budget we have 551 W-2s that went out last year. You know, so that's a lot of W-2s, and I'm trying to figure out how does the worker know if I am full-time or not by this general rubric?
Yeah, so there are a couple points in which the employee is informed of what job they have and what pay code designation they have. So one of the challenges that we have is we have part-timers filling in various part-time roles. And some of that we're trying to control or control and adjust for, because now, after having completed the Maryland State retirement audit, they don't care about how many different part-time jobs the individual have. What they care about is what is the total worked hours for that individual, regardless of whether they were a lifeguard one day, a park ranger the other day, and whatnot. And surprisingly, we allow this, that we allow an employee, part-time employee, to have multiple hats. So in the city code, you will see that reference to the 500 hours as determined by the Maryland State pension system. And we want to use that standard because that is a compliance standard that we have to adhere to the state. And we thought that that is a measure that it's not made up. It's not.
And that's a calendar year or fiscal year?
It's a calendar year, because wages are measured on the calendar year. So we're looking to attach any benefits to select part-time employees based on how the state retirement system will treat them. Now, there's some interest that the state has, right? The interest of the state is that the employer is the city is contributing towards a pension plan for
Right.
that employee that works 500 hours or more throughout the year. We see that as a class of benefits for the part-time employee. So in speaking with our legal team, if that is one aspect of the state law that gives an employee benefits, then we can use that as a basis for when does an employee become a benefit employee? And from there on, we can say, okay, what other benefits are extended beyond that? I think that this is where it can get problematic, because what are going to be the number of benefits that are provided to that part-time employee? We know that for the state pension system is going to be a state pension contribution that we make and that they also have to make to the system. But then the other benefits are numerous, and they're spelled out in the city code for the benefit employees, which are the full-time employees. Did that answer your question, Councilman Fritz?
I don't think it would help the employee understand. So the 500 hours is just for retirement, so it doesn't, this language does not contemplate that threshold.
No, but it doesn't need to be spelled out in the charter. It needs to be spelled out in the city code.
Sure. Okay. So then I guess my confusion, what is the word full-time adding in the charter?
Yeah, at the time, the full time is the designated for what are the benefit employees. Then the others are just the classifications that we currently have for the current employees: non-exempt, non-managerial, non-confidential.
So if someone's working 10/40, so they're working half-time, they're working 20 hours a week year-round, and they're a 10/40 employee rather than a 20, most people are 20/80, so 10/40, that person is full-time in the eyes of the city or not full-time?
It's not. And they were the legal team were going to look at they were looking at the national labor standards for an employee, and they were looking at what is a regular schedule versus an irregular schedule. So I think that's what your 10/40 you're getting at.
Sure.
Well, and I think for my workplace, full-time, there's full-time 40 hours and there's full-time 30 hours that's considered for benefits, but it's based on hours worked per week, not a total. And that's, I mean, that's how it's determined at my workplace, whether or not you get benefits or not. I mean, it's not for union purposes, but it's just for benefit purposes. So I don't know, do we have a standard like that?
There are some very select employees that have a reduced schedule that get benefit, but it's not common for us to have a 30-hour full-time employee. There isn't generally a job classification for that. There are employees that have requested a reduced schedule, and so they get a reduced salary.
It sounds like I think that is something that we need to make sure is very clearly defined, not in the charter, but very clearly defined what that means. Other questions on this from council? Okay, I see two hands in the audience. Go ahead, Mr. Hartman, and then we'll go. Yeah. And I don't know, I think, Ms. Lashley Mullen, maybe we can put up the red line, the item underneath there, up above. I think the one above that one.
117.
Yeah, I think it's that one. If you scroll down to the actual, yeah, right there. Thank you.
Michael Hartman, Center City. Just a clarification. In the beginning of Mr. Salmeron's remarks, he had talked about who was covered, who would be covered, and I think he said that there would be three sections. One was uniform officers in the police department. One was public works, and then he said all other departments. I'm wondering if that was a misstatement, in that there are employees in the police department that would be assumed would be covered under the umbrella one, but if you say other departments, that would exclude the police department, because you're already talking about the police department. So I'm wondering if you could clear that up.
No, the three groups. So the language there is the employees must fall in one of the three distinct bargaining units. So the distinction's made on the bargaining units. So one bargaining unit, the first one is the sworn police officers.
Right.
That is its own bargaining unit.
Right.
Second bargaining unit, covered employees working within the Department of Public Works.
Right.
Third bargaining unit, it's covered employees working in all other departments of the city.
But
So
when you
not
say
Public
other-
Works.
But when you say other departments, you've already stated two departments. One, the police department.
Only one
the-
department.
And then Public Works.
First reference is A on the screen, sworn police officers. It does not say Department of Police. It says sworn police officers.
Okay, fine.
And the only other departmental reference is Public Works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I just want to go back to the question of full-time non-exempt. I was a part-time faculty member who formed a union a while ago, so I'm very curious about how you define it. You're saying 30, I just want to, I know that there are different categories like seasonal or part-time or full-time, but I just want this, I just want this to be a very careful discussion about what exactly is included, because I know that a lot of people who are coming and talking to me about their interest in a union definitely seem to fall out of that category as it's listed up there. I'm just going to put that.
A more specific definition is on page 133, item number 2. It lists the full-time employee and regular part-time employees. I'll read the whole sentence. All full-time and regular part-time, non-exempt, non-managerial, non-confidential personnel of the city.
And this is in the code section, so that'll be actually the next discussion we have will be on the code language. We're not voting on either tonight, but just to be clear that the charter does currently say, the charter proposal does currently say full-time, and then in the language we're looking at, as Mr. Samaron said, it says there is a definition given for who's covered.
I think for the purposes of discussion, with the intent of further defining what the employee is, I think the full-time employee here is maybe unnecessary.
Maybe regular employee.
We can just say, well, I think the language can read all to recognize and engage in collective bargaining with one or more designated bargaining representatives of all non-exempt, non-managerial, non-confidential employees of the city of Greenbelt. And then we further define in the code.
That worked. I think that's right.
I think that's best, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can run that by.
Yeah, so at this point, both Jason and Jackson Lord will be working because one team is the labor attorneys, the other is administrative law.
Okay, so Mr. Orleans.
The language labor code in the package, and then followed by labor code in the package, is part of the existing code of the city of Greenbelt. I don't recall it. And some of it looks like it's proposed to be new. But within it, there's reference to the Employee Relations Board.
Mr. Orleans, I'm going to stop you right there because that's our next item. That's not this item.
However,
You can, Mr. Orleans, you can ask that question when we get to the code. We're just talking about the charter amendment right now.
let me ask this question. Does
No,
the city
Mr.
of Greenbelt
Orleans.
have a labor commissioner now?
That is related to the next item, not to the charter.
May I ask if we have a labor commissioner now?
You may ask that in the next section, Mr. Orleans. This is about the charter amendment that's on the screen.
Let me say again that I think it should simply read that Greenbelt Council and management recognizes the right
Mr.
of all
Orleans.
Greenbelt employees to organize and leave it at that.
Well, that's not in this. Okay, so it sounds like we have one fairly small change, and then we expect to have this on the agenda for next time for the charter amendment.
Correct. Now, I would remiss in my duties if I did not inform you that both of our legal teams have made themselves available to council for further discussion.
No. Okay. Anything else on this? Okay, let's move on to item 14, which is the actual code related to implementing the charter amendment. And so this is, I believe there are two items on here. One is a red line code that indicates the places where things are being changed, and the other, I think, incorporates those changes. So this is changes to the existing city code as indicated by the red line notations. Anything in particular you want to tee up on this one, Mr. Summerall?
No, we continue to try to resolve that part-time issue. I think that's we have so many different classifications or so many different part-time employees. I think it's problematic for bargaining rights when you have so many part-time employees that will, in one pay period, could have so many jobs within the organization. Not a new thing. It's not something I started. It has been an ongoing issue on how some of our part-time employees work in the city, and the state's retirement system audit has really forced us to rethink some of these employment strategies, and I think it's going to become more complicated as we look to staff a lot of our programming because we appreciate the flexibility of not just being able to have employees play multiple jobs in the organization at any given point, but also the flexibility of the employees that they want to do that. We have employees that do well in that environment, that one day they're at the pool, another day they're park rangers and doing other things. But I think that as we look to designate employees, have them fit in specific categories, I think that's going to become less feasible for us.
So I think we already do some things for our part-time employees, giving them a cost of living adjustment and some other adjustments that might not be true all the time for part-time employees.
Absolutely. We believe in paying fair wages. And so we've adjusted the COLA for our part-time employees in the last 3 budgets that I worked on. So We think it's not just fair and the right thing to do, but it's also part of maintaining a competitive workspace, right? We wanna be competitive, on many levels, not just pay.
Questions and comments on the code? Yeah, Ms. Pompey.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to, two things. I want to get back to that point that you made, but first let me bring up this other issue. This is something that we discussed in our work session here with Jackson Lewis several weeks ago. We talked about ways in which the union would be recognized. We talked about election certification as well as voluntary recognition. And I suggested that we use card check recognition, which our lawyer pushed back on, and council did not agree with my amendment on that. However, something we also discussed was the fact that it would be a decision of council whether we recognize the union via card check or we had asked them to conduct an election. So in going over the code, this is specifically on, I think this is page 7 is where we discuss representation, section 13-237. Item 2, where we would discuss voluntary recognition, it's just a little vague there as to who does the recognizing. And currently it says the city instead of the city council. And I would like to amend this piece of the code so that it is clear that it's the city council that is deciding whether or not we recognize our workers via code. There are a few, I can share my screen if you'd like. There's just a couple of places in section 2.
Can you give me the code reference? It's a 2.
Section 13-237.
I'm looking at C2. Should I share my screen, or I feel like that would?
You can. I pulled it up on my screen. Did you want me to share my screen?
Well, I have outlined here where I want to make the changes, so I think it might just be easier if I share it. You know what I mean? Share. Oh gosh, guys, I have so many. Share.
It's coming up.
What? Ah, I did it. I always just feel like it's magic when it actually works. So you could see that the changes right here. If an employee organization demonstrates a majority support in an appropriate bargaining unit through authorization cards or other reliable evidence dated within 30 days of submission, the city council, the council is the word I added here, may voluntarily recognize the organization as the exclusive representative without prior review by the labor commissioner. And then it says within 5 business days of recognition, the city council shall provide written notice to the labor commissioner and post notice to the employees in the unit. And then I changed here, if you look, in the event the petition filed is accompanied by evidence within 30 days prior to the filing of the petition, more than 50% of the employees in the bargaining unit have designated an employee organization as their exclusive representative. For purposes of collective bargaining, the labor commissioner may give and I changed that to city council, the option to voluntarily recognize the organization without first conducting a certification election. If the city council declines to recognize the organization, then the labor commissioner shall conduct certification election pursuant to the section. So those are the very small changes that I made, I think, just to sort of clarify what we had already discussed in our work session.
Any comments or thoughts on that?
I want to thank Councilmember Pompey for bringing for her hard work on this and for bringing this forward. I do think that card check is the best way to do it, and definitely want to clarify the role of the council. That we are making that decision. Barring any, I understand the points made by legal counsel at the previous meeting, but barring any irregularity, I don't think there's any reason why the council shouldn't sign off on a card check election. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this I heard my colleagues loud and clear. This still maintains it. It's only an option. Like, we are the ones who are deciding. It's not mandating it. It does not mandate an election. It does not mandate voluntary recognition. It just puts the choice in the hands of the council, what we decide to do.
Okay. Now, is this one? Do we need to put this forward as a motion and vote on it? as a change, or is it when we're not really putting this code forward for approval? So
Ask that language be
added as.
be brought forward when the final.
Sense? Is that the right thing to do, or should we vote?
It-
I'm happy to do either.
It does. There's still some other changes that the team are working on, so it's not a complete draft. So I think the complete draft needs to come back.
We ask that that be reflected in the
Yeah.
final draft.
Now, I do notice in that same section, there's a place where it looks like 14 was crossed out and 45 was written, but it's still, the text says 14.
15 days.
So, yeah, that should be, it should both be the same. Any other comments from council on the code? Councilmember Fritz.
Yeah, I brought this up in last meeting, and I just, my first priority is to set up this process, but I don't think, I would, in the same way, I'd like for our final legislation to at least, I'd like to have a fuller discussion on section 13.239, which is the no strike, no lockout provision. I do think when you think of workers in the private sector, they do have, under the National Labor Relations Act, the right to strike under certain conditions regulated by the National Labor Relations Act. And I would say that, you know, our trash pickup workers, if they were working for Republic Services, they would have the ability to go on strike. But because they work for the city of Greenbelt, we're saying that they can't. And I don't think that that's, I think that not only is that heavy-handed, I think it goes against freedom of association. And I understand originally why the language is in there. And if you look at the original language, it specifically says public safety. And I understand the rationale that public safety employees would not be allowed to go on strike and that there's a public interest there. But when we're expanding this to all workers, I do think it becomes a little ridiculous that we're telling arts instructors that you have to work without a contract. That's a disparity that wouldn't happen if you were working for a private institution. So I would at least like for there to be a discussion before we adopt final language on art, and I would like ultimately a vote before are we going to consciously expand this beyond the narrow interest of a government saying there's a public safety interest served by saying that police officers can't go on strike, but we're going to tell, you know, arts instructors, our lifeguards, you know, at the end of the day, if the pool closes, people will be sad, but no one's going to die because the pool will be closed. You know, public safety, there's a different interest. 911 call takers is a different interest, but to tell our trash workers, the people who pick up leaves, you know, the garden, horticultural workers, to tell those folks that that they don't have the right to the same freedom of association as their public sector, as their private sector colleagues, because they simply work for the city of Greenbelt. I don't think that there's a good basis for that. There was a very important bill debated at the state level talking about educators, and I would just, educators and their right to strike. I will say that the states that ban strikes don't actually see fewer strikes. West Virginia tried to ban public sector strikes. They still have strikes. Arizona, there's actually there's no increase in strikes just because you ban. There's no increase. There's no decrease in strikes because you banned them. They just take other forms, or they take unregulated strikes, and there's really no process for that. So I don't think that this is something that should be extended, but I understand why it exists in the current language, but I don't want this to be, I would move against I would be against expanding this to the rest of the workforce.
Okay, so that sounds like something maybe to see if that, do you have thoughts on that, Mr. Salmaran?
I do. Well, I have a question because I do have some thoughts. So it would be all employees would be allowed to strike, or you
No,
want to make a
retain it for public safety employees. So
and public works employees.
I don't think there's a public safety nexus.
There's snow operations.
There is snow, but I would say that the way that workers are very unlikely to go on a wildcat strike during snow operations. And there's still disciplinary processes. That's not saying that there's no consequences for not showing up to work. This is saying that there are enhanced penalties that are beyond the scope of contractual bargaining. when the contract is up, if we go through the entire process and we don't get a contract and the workers vote to authorize a strike, that means that there's been multiple stages of failure. This isn't just a random occurrence that happens. But I would feel it. It would be hypocritical for us to say that, once again, Republic Services, you can go on strike if you're a private trash collector, but because you work for a public entity solely, that is the reason why you can't go on strike. Now, if there are specific cases that we need to make, and you want to say snow removal is a specific thing that is carved out, I think there's a public safety rationale. But when we're talking about the First Amendment, when we're talking about the 13th Amendment, that people control their own labor, I think it's important to note that just because you work for the city of Greenbelt doesn't mean you leave your rights at the door.
Ms. Pope.
I don't think we're saying you need to leave the rights at the door, but we also have to have something in place that is, you cannot just pick like, okay, you can strike, you cannot strike, and you can do this, and I think this is getting way, way, way out there, and we're setting ourselves up for some problems, I think. So every time we come to the table, there's new things, and there's other things, and there were changes, and we want to do this. At first we just want to make sure that our public works employees are able to unionize, which that's what we all want. But if we're sitting here every time and this is happening, this is never going to get done. And I will not vote for something like this. I mean, every time there's new information, then it has to go back to the lawyers. Then we're going to come back to the table. But no.
Thoughts from other council members? I think it's something maybe worth looking into and seeing what restrictions could be put in, because it was put in as public safety very specifically in the previous code. And so I don't know if there's other examples of language that maintains that no strike for public safety, but allows, I think it's a question to think about.
I mean, I would concur with that. I think it's certainly something to be considered. I think the issue here, I think that it's important to remember here is that employees don't want to strike. Like, that's never the goal. The goal is never to strike when they're bargaining their contract. They never go into it hoping for a strike. They never go into it wanting a strike. What they want is to bargain a fair contract. So I think also just keep that in mind, right? That what remains in this contract is that everyone is committed to a fair process. They're all here in good faith, trying to get to the right place. So I wouldn't look at this as now all our public works employees are going to strike. Like, I wouldn't think so, because I think that the city, should they organize, the city will go into this and bargain in good faith. And I believe our public works employees will come into it and bargain in good faith. And every time the contractors renewed, this is what I would hope. This is what we see already in our city when our police department comes in and bargains, right? They come in and bargain in good faith. So, and the city bargains in good faith. So I just want to, remind everyone of that this is not all of a sudden, if employees are allowed to strike, they're going to. The goal is always to bargain a fair contract with no strikes.
Well, and I think, Mr. Summerall, you and I were talking about this earlier today. I mean, I'm not sure I realized, I think most of our public works employees are called in if there is a snow emergency. So I think there may be, to Councilmember Fritz's point, I think we have 3 distinct bargaining agreements, right? 2 of them are pretty key to public safety. The Department of Recreation perhaps less so. So there might be a way to make a dividing line there in terms of who are essential workers and who get called, who would need to be called into an emergency, and be a bigger concern if they decided to strike in the middle of a snowstorm.
And
So-
I just want to say, this is not a hypothetical. I'm thinking about our federal workers right now who are being asked to make extraordinary sacrifices without compensation. And if they make any murmuring of organizing against that, they can face retaliation. So I don't think that this is a hypothetical. I understand we have to balance the need for public safety. I don't think anyone up here is saying that we don't understand that. The point is very clearly that we are intentionally expanding this right of collective bargaining. And as we're doing that, as we're moving beyond just the window of public safety sworn officers, you know, some of these regulations were not written with those workers in mind. So I don't think that they should all just be uniformly expanded to the rest of the workforce uniformly unless we have a very strong public safety rationale.
Okay, any other comments from council? And then I see 3 hands in the audience.
I do have one other comment. Mr. Samaran, you talked about how you and staff are continuing to work through some of this language. Do you have a timeline on that, and when, so like when we can actually expect to see the code and be able to vote on it?
Right. I last week I sent an email on Friday to the team to get updates on where we landed on the part-time employees and then the non-confidential employees. Those are the 2 major items. The non-confidential employees, there were 2 approaches that the team was looking at. One is designating what are the the confidential employees, so all the HR staff, the finance staff because of their level of access in the organization, and then folks in the city manager's office. Whether we would designate who are the classified employees, or do we outright exempt those employees from bargaining units?
Specific positions.
Specific positions, right. So I don't know which, we didn't make a decision what was the easiest to do, whether we just have a list of positions and say all of these positions are exempt from collective bargaining, or do we say confidential employees are exempt from bargaining, and then we have a separate list for what are confidential employees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah. So you're moving along in that process and hope to come to some
We are. And I
resolution?
think it'd probably be the easiest that we explicitly call out the employees that will be, the positions that will be exempt from collective bargaining within my office, within HR, within finance office, within IT department as well. Because we have IT folks that can go in everyone's email.
I just want to make sure we're able to move this forward. That's why I'm sort of asking for a timeline here as to when you think you guys will complete that work and make a proposal to council.
Well, when this is all done, we're going to get a clean version of that, right? And then we're going to discuss it and vote on this or not.
Right.
that's
You have
Okay.
you have
Yes,
not
that's what I'm
seen
just
the
trying to
code.
determine
Right,
when that's
because
done.
I just, it's like sometimes we sound like we are such terrible, the city doesn't take care of their workers, they don't care, and we're like, and that's not, and you compare it to the federal government, what's going on right there, that is so much different than what we as a small municipal city are. So, and it's just, some of the things that you say, it's just really, I don't even, right now, I don't even know what to say. I need to process that first.
Directed at me.
I think this
so
maybe we can.
I will process it for myself, and then I just want to make sure that whatever changes are made or whatever additions or deletions are made, that we're going to come back to the table with our in-house counsel to discuss it and have questions ready if there should be any questions, and I probably will have some at that time.
We are not voting on anything tonight.
I understand that.
Yeah. Mr. Lerman.
And for context, the code is before you a bit prematurely, because what we agreed to doing was the charter amendment first, and then come back with council with the city code.
Trent live on Laurel Hill. Trent Leon Lerman live on Laurel Hill Road. So of course I'm a union organizer, support the right to strike, but I actually don't think that's a discussion we need to have right now. I think it can be down the road. I will say that just thank you, Councilmember Pompey, for introducing this idea around voluntary recognition. I think there's one other word that you might need to fix so that you all have the so that you all are the deciders and not the labor commissioner is the decider as to whether to give voluntary recognition or not. It says the labor commissioner may give the employer the option. So I think you would want to change that to the labor commissioner shall give the employer the option, right? You all being the county council, right?
City council.
City council, I mean, city council. So am I right about that?
Motion.
the,
Took up a
idea is,
motion.
the idea is that you guys are the deciders. So
Right, that they always present the option to
Right,
us.
that they
if
always
it meets
present
this
the option.
threshold.
Right. Okay. That was my one. The only other question is that
That makes sense to me.
Where's that? What's the
I
reference?
think that's the same section,
Section.
That section
12237
C2?
C2.
This is on page 8, Josue.
I'm looking at the 164 page document.
Oh, I'm
Page
sorry.
139.
I apologize. I'm
139,
looking
yeah.
at my thing.
so right.
It's not in the red, it's in the black, about
Yeah.
halfway down.
Oh, so that's not an item that's being proposed
Yeah,
to
it's
change.
a new thing.
Right. Changing that may to shall, so that you all as the council have that choice. Does that make sense?
It's there towards like the 2/3 down, right? That's what we're looking at.
Where that cursor is.
Yeah, in the event any petition filed by an employee organization is accompanied by evidence that within 30 days prior to the filing of the petition, more than 50% of employees in the bargaining unit have designated the employee organization as their exclusive representative for purposes of collective bargaining. Right now, it says the labor commissioner may give the city council the option, and Trent is saying we should change that possibly to shall give us the option, so that we are always presented with that option, basically, if it's viable.
Right. So the decision is up to you all and not the labor commissioner.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay. The only other question I did have was, Mayor Pro Tem Weaver, you brought it up. What is it? Is it 45 days or is it 14 days?
We're going to get clarification on that.
Because why would it change to 45 days? That's a long time to be able to dispute something.
Yeah, that does seem like a long time.
That's just I don't know why it would be 45. You don't know?
I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, my position on that is 14. Obviously, 45 is like, I don't know why that would change. Thanks.
Although I think that's a challenge presented to the labor commissioner, so that's actually giving more time to the union, I think, the union bargaining unit. Okay,
We'll ask the attorneys.
okay. And then I saw Ms. Davis.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. While I was on council, and council as a whole wanted to be sure that we considered Public Works first responders. And we gave them the respect and dignity of being called first responders on the same level as our police department. Because very often, when there's a snow incident, or a tree comes down, or the power lines come down, yeah, the police are called, but the Public Works are the ones out there just as fast. And they have to deal with that. And a lot of the Public Works folks are cross-trained. So there may be a trash collector one day, but they also do something another day, another time. So be very, very careful how you deal with strike or no strike. When you say, oh, public safety should have it, but not the Public Works. They just pick up trash, and we don't need to have trash picked up every day. And I'm sure that's not what you meant, but that's how it comes across to the Public Works people. They are first responders, and that's why they're included in the American Legion banquet to get an award. Now, I also was stopped by a Public Works employee outside of the co-op, and he was going on, and I said, first of all, I'm not on council anymore. And he was surprised. Oh, you're not on council anymore? No, I'm not. But he was very concerned that the council is delaying this and taking way too much time on this, that you were discussing back and forth about elections and cards and so forth. And it sounds like you're starting to come together on that, and that sounds great. And then, of course, he asked the perennial question, well, why didn't council do this years and years ago? And good question. When we accepted collective bargaining with the police department, no one from Public Works or anywhere else was even interested. They were, they were fine. And we said all along, if they ever formed and organized and wanted to do it, we would allow it. And I'm glad that you all are doing that and going forward, but please treat everybody with respect. And I'm glad you added the third element about anyone else that's not Public Works or police, because at some point, recreation people or whatever, they're going to start wanting to do it too. We've always tried as a council to do whatever the pay or COLA or whatever most benefits, whatever we did for the police, we did for all of the rest of the city employees. And maybe that made the other city employees feel, well, we're being taken care of. Now the Public Works has issues, fine. They are organizing, and I'm glad that they are, but please listen to them and treat them with respect. Thank you.
I believe Mr. Orleans is the last comment from the audience.
Thank you. I have a simple belief. I've had it for many years. Anybody who works for a living has a right to withhold her or his labor. It doesn't matter whether they work for a local police department or the FBI. It doesn't matter. Everybody who works for a living has an inherent right to organize. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Greenbelt Council that wants to recognize that, or King Donald or King George previously mentioned. It doesn't matter. Every worker has a right to organize. Now, the person whose picture stands over on the left-hand corner of this room, whom we all sort of like to emulate or take pride in living in this town created by his administration, what that administration did was simply make it reasonable for workers' inherent right to be recognized. And if they chose to organize, to have that be recognized. And if they chose to strike, to withhold their labor, to have that recognized. A process which allows for people to do what they inherently are able to do, whether or not the boss, in this case Greenbelt Council maybe, or in King George's government or King Donald's, whether or not the boss likes it or not, it enables a process by which inherent frustrations are resolved. You guys are doing more, I agree with former Mayor James Davis. You guys are taking too long and doing more than is necessary. Recognize their rights, the rest will follow. But two specific points. I asked earlier, do we have a labor commissioner now? It's in the code, but I don't think we have one. And there's a process in the code by which the labor commissioner will receive requests from a group of employees for recognition. That needs to be rectified. I don't think we have a labor commissioner now. That needs to be resolved. Lastly, in the existing code, there's reference to a role for the Employee Relations Board. I'm not very happy with that advisory body to council, but it exists. There does not seem to be a rationale for the Employee Relations Board were some of these code changes to be made and were the charter to be amended, and I'm wondering what council's intent on that. Lastly, I don't care whether a regular employee, whether they work 1 hour a year or 500 hours a year, if they're a regular employee, they also have a right to be organized and have representation. And I think council should reconsider that. Thank you.
I believe yeah, I think there are some things about that, but Mr. Salmon, do you want to answer?
about the.
I mean, it actually has language. There's a whole section about the labor commissioner